Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the September 24th, 2019 VMZA docket. Initially, I'd ask that you all turn off your cell phones and keep talking to a minimum. If you have to have a conversation, please step out into the hall. As you know, that would disturb the proceedings because it's being recorded by audio and visually. The board will vote on each case and make a decision at the end of the docket. If you'd like to sit for a civics lesson, I know some of you have, feel free to stay to hear what that decision would be. Otherwise, you can contact the BMZA office tomorrow morning after 9 a.m. The number's 410-396-4301. Again, 410-396-4301. You should receive your resolution in the mail within about 30 days. As always, we ask that you please do not do any work until your resolution is received, and certainly do not do any work in Baltimore City without pulling the proper permits. I'm going to address some postponements for this docket. The following case, which is previously on this docket, has been postponed. Case number 2018-248, 3401 East Federal Street. If anyone's here for that matter has been postponed, and that will likely be reset to another date. On the issue of postponements, you'll see that we have 3 board members here today. Typically we have 5, most often 4, but because we only have 3, the vote to approve any application must be unanimous. Each board member must agree. That presents sort of a unique situation. Because it requires unanimous consent to approve your application, if you'd like to postpone your case because you'd like a larger board presence here, please let us know. Either side can request it. Both parties must agree to go forward with 3 board members. If your case is postponed, you will need to call the office to reschedule your case using that same number that I gave you previously. I do know that we have one case that needs to be postponed, or at least a postponement request is being made, 2019-286, which we'll need to do on the dock here. 2019-286, 1201 West Baltimore Street. Ms. Hecker.
Good afternoon, Caroline Hecker on behalf of the applicant. We are requesting a postponement in this matter. This is an appeal of a violation notice that was issued because our client didn't have a use and occupancy permit. We have applied for the permit. We'd like to postpone this and allow that to be processed and issued, and that will resolve the violation notice and allow the appeal to be dismissed. So with your permission, we'd like to postpone until that can occur.
Okay, any objections? Okay, no. Postponement granted.
Thank you.
That is case number 2019-286. Is there any other applicant or someone opposing a matter who may be seeking a postponement because of this 3 board member rule requiring unanimous consent? All right. No hands being stated. Well, I see a hand. Sir, come on up. Come up, you could tell me the case number you're here for and your name.
Hi, my name is Sherwin Brown. Case I believe is 297, the rezoning of 3502 Buena Vista.
Okay, case number 2019-297, that's 3502 Buena Vista Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, and Sherwin Brown, that was a request to use as 2 dwelling units. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
Apparently we have a posting issue with regard to this particular property.
Oh yeah, so the posting issue was we put it out there before we went on vacation. We were told it was going to rain in the forecast, so I had a friend put it inside the bay windows. And so I think that was, still visible and all that, things of that nature. But we did hear from the neighbor that called that in. We did discuss that with her.
Okay.
I think it smoothed things out.
All right, so you're requesting a postponement?
Yeah.
I think we've made a determination that the posting is insufficient for the hearing. So if you'd like to request a postponement, we'll be favorably disposed towards that.
Okay, great. I did have a question. So we also heard from the gentleman over here about the recommendation to disapprove. And so based on something about that it's currently zoned as R6, and there would need to be some documentation to prove that it has already been used as a two-dwelling unit. So I was wondering if there was any instruction on that, what kind of documentation yeah.
There probably is some advice you can get, but you can't get it from
From here.
this board
Okay.
at this time. I would.
Zoning administration.
So this week, you should either contact our office at the 4301 number, or talk to the zoning administrator as well.
Okay.
But since the case is being postponed, this board can't offer you that advice.
Okay.
All right, so 2019-297 is postponed, and it'll be reset on the docket.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
How will I find out about that? They will mail the new date, the hearing date?
That's correct. You should contact us either tomorrow or Thursday, and then we will reissue that posting notice.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else seeking a postponement? Come on up, sir. And again, if you can reference the case number for which you're here.
I don't know the case number, but the address is 2042 Cecil Avenue.
Okay. It is on the consent docket.
Are you the applicant, sir?
Yes,
All right. You're requesting a postponement of that case.
yes.
Any reason for the requested postponement?
I've been traveling back and forth between Fort Jackson, North Carolina, and Baltimore to take care of this, and I'm not exactly sure that the postage was sufficient.
Okay.
I don't know if it's been decided upon yet, but
We, let's see, how do we handle this? I can tell you that we have determined there not to be a posting issue with regard to this property.
okay. I haven't actually been past there myself to check. I
Okay.
literally just got back.
So,
in
so
town.
you're concerned that there could possibly be a posting issue because you haven't
Yes.
been there to
I was
look at
sent
it?
photographs of everything
Okay,
beforehand, that everything was posted, and I paid a company to do it for me, but my last posting issue was that the signs were destroyed.
okay. Do we have an affidavit on file with regard to the posting for this
I
property?
did submit one after.
I believe we do, and I can say that there's no opposition to your appeal.
Okay.
So it would be probably in your best interest to hear that case today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, save that postponement for another day. All right. Okay, having seen no other requests or observed no other requests for postponement, we'll move on. Let me address, before we get to the consent matters, any matters for which opposition has signed in.
296.
Do we have any?
We have opposition in 2019-294, 7500 Hartford Road.
2019-294, 7500 through 7504 Hartford Road. Do we have the applicant here, Anthony Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, and sir, I imagine you're here for the opposition? Yes, sir. Okay, have you folks had an opportunity to speak?
No, sir.
Okay, would you like an opportunity to talk? We do find that affording that opportunity may help iron out some objections, and maybe you'll compromise. So, have an opportunity to do that, we appreciate it. Any others, Mr. Baumgartner?
2019-296, 3108 through 3110 O'Donnell Street.
With Mr. Caballo? Okay, and who is here for the opposition for 3108 through 3110 O'Donnell Street? Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Have you folks had an opportunity to speak, Mr. Caballo?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Would any further discussion be fruitful, do you believe?
I think we're on the same page. We want to hear the case today.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Any others? That's it? Very well. We've got some consent, two consents here. Going to call the consent docket at this point, and these are cases for which the board has received sufficient information to approve the appeal. When I call your case, please stand to my left, and we'll get you all lined up, get you all sworn, and then we'll call your case and proceed accordingly. First case, 2019-267, 2042 Cecil Avenue, Christopher Haynes. Come on up. The next case on the consent docket, 2019-295, 1826 Belt Street. Mr. Caballo. And finally, case number 2019-339, 1205 South Highland Avenue. Rich Paulin?
Raise your hands, please. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, calling the case of 2019-267, 2042 Cecil Avenue. Mr. Haynes, why don't you step in front of the mic, sir? This is a request to continue use as 2 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have any staff reports?
Yes,
No.
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has reviewed this application and noted that this property has in the past been used this way. The department has no objection to the application. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Haynes, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Very well. The board, having heard your appeal, believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Calling the case of 2019-295, 1826 Belt Street. Mr. Carballo. This is a request to remove existing rear deck and construct an addition at second floor rear. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Carballo, is there anything you'd like to add to your application?
No, sir.
All right, well, the board, having heard your appeal, believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you. Finally, case number 2019-339, 1205 South Highland Avenue. Rich Paulin?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. And this is a request to remove and replace existing first floor rear addition and construct new second floor rear addition. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And, sir, is there anything else you'd like to add to your application?
Moving forward, the owner will the contract purchaser will occupy this property in the city, and I think it's a good thing.
Wonderful. Good to know. All that being said, the board, having heard your appeal, believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we good? I'm sorry, sir?
The gentleman on, I'm trying to look at the number here, 294.
No, just leave it there.
The gentleman representing
Yes, sir.
294, and I was in opposition.
Yes, sir.
We talked in the hallway, and my main concern was the application.
Hold on.
Or should I wait till the end?
Well, you know what? Yeah, why don't you hold that off? Okay. Sir, are you still in opposition? Let me ask you that. Okay, that's all I need to know. Moving on to the regular docket. Again, when I call a case, the applicant should stand to my left. To the extent there's opposition, stand to my right. Applicant will speak, the opposition will have an opportunity to respond, and then the applicant has the last word. There will be no further back and forth, and we'll start with case number 2019-249, 200 South Conkling Street. Peter Previs, to continue to use basement as tavern.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Previs on behalf of the applicants. The LLC that owns the building is Paravano LLC. This is Mr. David Paravano. He is the sole owner of that entity. The entity that owns the business, the sports bar that's there, is Conkling Holdings, Inc., and that is also owned by Mr. Paravano.
Okay. Should we get these folks sworn at this point? Then we'll.
Raise your hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. And before we go forward, Mr. Previs, do we have any staff reports?
Yeah. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted this essentially is a question of whether the tavern did or did not previously receive authorization to include the basement, or whether it was strictly confined to the first floor or street level of the premises. The department would recommend disapproval of the application unless the board determines that use of the basement level of the premises as part of the existing tavern does not constitute an expansion of a non-conforming use, which expansion is prohibited by the zoning code. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Previs?
Thank you. If I could just make briefly explain what I think this is about, and then I'm going to call on Mr. Massa, who is a little bit older than me and has some history, and then Mr. Paravano to to support what's been going on there now.
Very well.
Basically, what occurs, we have copies, we researched the liquor board cards and show that this restaurant tavern goes back to 1947 or so. And the initial liquor board cards indicate first floor for business, basement for business. And then the liquor board cards seem to switch back to first floor for business, basement for storage, which is out of habit, I believe, what often happens with the liquor board, the liquor license, when they explain what part of the licensed premises can be used. And then it goes back to first floor for business, basement for business. And then when Mr. Paravano takes it, the language is copied off of the prior liquor license, and it says first floor for business, basement for storage. Mr. Paravano and Mr. Massa can testify that this sports bar had been utilized by Pete Caringi's, it was called Tommy's, food, drink, and very interested soccer aficionados, Italian-American soccer aficionados that used that basement area to watch games, Sundays, World Cup, what have you. And the basement has basically been there. It may have been cleaned up, modernized, but never changed. It's always been an area with a bar and to watch soccer. So there was a prior appeal that another attorney had filed to expand the nonconforming use. That is not allowed. What we're saying is that for some strange reason, the use permit and the liquor board cards would say, well, the liquor board would say first floor for business, basement for storage, and the use permit said first floor, can't use the second floor, and didn't talk about the basement, but it predates 1971. Yes, sir.
Did you have any copies of those liquor board cards?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have them here with you? Can you
Yes.
submit them as evidence, please?
Absolutely. I didn't staple them. Would you like more than one set?
One set's fine.
That's fine.
Okay. So if I could call Mr. Massa? Okay.
Is this the same thing, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Massa, you were previously sworn?
Yes.
State your complete name and address.
Alfred Massa, 2704 Superior Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21234.
Spell.
Massa, M-A-S-S-A.
Okay. How old are you, Mr. Massa?
69,
And how long have you lived in the Baltimore area?
since 1960.
Okay. And do you know Mr. Paravano?
I do, yes.
And how do you know him?
We're we've been business partners, we are friends, our families socialize together, and I must truthfully admit, I'm godfather to his last born.
Fantastic. All right. Now, you currently know the premises there is K&D Sports Bar, is that right?
Very well.
And you've been there recently?
Within the last year, yes.
Okay. And you've been there on and off?
Yes.
Has the premises, other than remodeling, has the premises changed from prior to when Mr. Paravano had it?
Not since, other than the cosmetic changes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the owner immediately prior to Mr. Paravano, who was that?
Bob Harrison,
Okay. And then prior to that?
Pete Caringi, Pete Caringi.
Okay.
And then prior to him was Mike DiMartino.
All right. So Pete Caringi is a fairly famous name in the Maryland, Baltimore soccer world. Is that right?
It is, that's correct.
And is it his son that currently
His
coaches at
son-
UMBC?
His son coaches UMBC, has for many years, and delivered a quality program to the state of Maryland.
Okay. And this was the sports bar where it was a hub of his soccer organization. Is that right?
That's a fact. I myself played from 68 to 71 at UMBC and knew of Tommy's Lounge as a soccer aficionado bar. And we did attend viewings of soccer games in the basement through the 70s, moved into the area in 82, and frequented Tommy's Lounge, became a property owner in 85 on Grubney Street, 3 blocks away. So I'm very familiar with that particular bar.
Okay, so you and I went through these liquor board cards, is that right, at the liquor board?
Yes,
All right, and the first card, the earliest one that we could find is 1947 for Specca's Restaurant. First floor for basement, first floor for business, basement for business.
that's correct.
You don't go back that far.
I don't,
All right.
thankfully.
Okay. And then we copied a card 10 years later in 57 that shows the same thing. First floor for business, basement for business.
Correct.
Still Specca's, right?
Yes,
All right. And then at some point, that we don't know why or how, the card for 1958 now says first floor for business, basement for storage. Is that correct?
well, it does say that, but
Okay. And then we have a card in 1971 being the year that may be of some importance here. And it indicates first floor for business, basement for storage. Is that right?
it does say that, yes.
Okay. And it also says B2. Wow. Wish that were the case, but that doesn't seem to be right. All right. So now, Michael D. Martino purchases in 1978. Is that right?
Correct.
And he also had the sports bar there.
Yes, he did.
Okay. And he made sure on his card in 1978 that basement for storage was scratched out and it said first floor for first floor and basement for business. Is
That's
that right?
correct.
Okay. And then when the Coringis take over as Tommy's Lounge in 1995, it continues to say first floor and basement for business. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. And then when Mr. Harrison takes over, the card now again says first floor for business and the basement silent.
Right, correct.
All right, and then we have the cards, the initial cards for the transfer to Mr. Paravano, and then it parrots that language, first floor for business, and then later on in 2008 says first floor for business, basement for storage. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay, and ask the board to accept these as joint exhibit 1 for the appellant.
Accepted.
Okay. Now, we also looked at the oldest zoning card that we could come up with, and it indicates 200 South Conklin Street, a B12 zone, 1946, permit restaurant and tavern first floor. And it doesn't mention anything about the basement.
basement.
Okay. And that's been as exhibit 2? All right, and then we dug up a couple pictures from Mr. Coringi's daughter. Can you identify what this is and
Well,
about when it is?
it's a party, and it's held in the basement at 200 South Conklin Street, and it's Debbie Wall now, prior Debbie Coringi, and her husband Tommy Wall, who was also a very popular soccer player in the area, and that's why it was called Tommy's Lounge.
Okay, and you've estimated these photographs are from the early 80s?
Absolutely.
And this is the way the basement looked?
Yes,
And this is the way the basement looked when it was Martino's prior to 71?
yes,
And it had always been there?
yes.
And you being...
And there was an established bar downstairs, a men's and ladies' room. There was a walk-in for draft beer that had been built, tucked away it's actually the front section of the building.
Okay, and you can see behind Debbie Wall the bar stools, is that right?
Correct, yes.
That's joint exhibit 3? All right, and then you have a relation with Mr. Paravano. I'll ask him too, but the place didn't remain closed. He cleaned it up in the basement, but the same
Correct.
thing is there, right?
Correct. The opportunity for private parties, birthday parties, was there all along. I did not attend any there, but it was there, and it was for the having if someone chose to use the basement as a birthday party.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions unless the board has some questions for you.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Let me direct the question to Mr. Baumgartner.
Yes, sir.
With regard to I guess for lack of a better phrase, the flip-flopping of the language on the zoning cards between basement for business, basement for storage, is there any consequence to the zoning cards being identified
Storage versus the main business use?
Right.
Generally, no. Storage is treated as part and parcel with the business. So whether it's used for storage or for bar patrons or for parties or for any other use, as long as it was connected to that tavern or bar or restaurant use, it would be all under one use.
Right.
Understood. Very well. Board having no further questions? I think.
Thank you.
we're good. Thank you for your
Can
presentation.
I just call Mr. Paravano briefly to make, to
Absolutely.
confirm that nothing's changed? Mr. Paravano, you were sworn?
Yes,
Okay, and your address?
11120 Philadelphia Road.
Spell your name for poor Mr. Bryson over here.
Paravano, Paravano.
Thank you. All right, you purchased this business that's now called K&D Sports Bar in February 8, 2005, is that right?
Yes,
The building and the business?
yes,
All right, and you've done some cleaning up of the structure,
yes, yes.
modernized.
Modernized.
Did you change the basement?
No, it's the same layout as it was. It's always been the same.
The bar, the bathrooms, the
Yes,
storage,
yes.
the office, it's all the same? Okay. And the business hasn't been discontinued or vacant for more than a year at any point since
No.
then, is that
No,
correct?
sir.
Thank you.
Very well. Thank you for your presentation.
Very much.
Good. Calling the case of 2019-250, 1801 through 1821 Washington Boulevard. Ms. Hecker?
Good afternoon. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg Martin, on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to allow Mr. Williams to take over here.
Just to confirm we're on the right case, this is a request to expand the existing gas station / convenience store located on 1801 through 1819 Washington Boulevard into 1821 through 1823 Washington Boulevard. Is that correct?
That's correct. For the record, Justin Williams on behalf of the applicant, joined by Jeffrey Bainbridge from Two Farms and Stephen Warfield, the engineer. And the, and I'm sorry. Steve Hyman, the landlord of the premises that's supposed to be expanded into.
Okay. Swear the witnesses?
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing?
Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that the proposed property for expansion is in the I-2 zoning district, which makes this proposed use conditional in that particular area. The property is in the Carroll-Camden Industrial Area, Urban Renewal Area, which plan does not prohibit this proposed use. The original property, 1801, is within the Montgomery Park Business Center planned unit development, which also does not prohibit an expansion of a use already established. The key thing is that the site and landscape plans for this proposed enlargement of this gas station were reviewed and approved by the Site Plan Review Committee on June 27th of 2019, at which time the applicant stated that the separate ownership of these two properties involved in the proposed enlarged gas station would necessitate, in the event that the lease for one of the properties would be terminated, removal of the gas station improvements, meaning structures, canopy, and gasoline pumps and related islands, from that property. The applicant stated a willingness to proceed with the proposed improvements regardless of such a possibility. Therefore, the Department of Planning recommends approval of the application, subject to the condition that all improvements and landscaping are completed in accordance with site and landscaping plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, before you get started, let me just begin with a question or two. I understand that you would like to add a pump on the adjoining property that is not owned by the owner of the gas station right now, right? Will there be any underground tanks on the adjoining property with the one pump?
I don't think so. No. Our lines going back and forth to the dispenser, but no.
One at a time.
Jeff Bainbridge, Royal Farms. No, there's, is it 2 dispensers? The 1. It's 2 dispensers. But all the storage tanks are on the existing property, but there's going to be underground lines to feed those dispensers.
Okay, thank you. Satisfied my curiosity now, you may proceed. Thank you.
Sure. Well, so I guess I'll be brief and by way of proffer. If the board has any questions, please let us know. The property at issue is the existing Royal Farms at 1821 Washington Boulevard. have an exhibit in front of you showing the intersection. It's across the street from the Montgomery Park planning development, as Mr. French mentioned. The proposal is to go to the southwest towards 1801 Washington Boulevard, raise the existing building, and extend the canopy across the property line, and add 2 pumps, and additionally add 16 parking spaces and landscaping into what's now pervious surface. I've included a bunch of exhibits for your review. The property is located along a truck route, which is Washington Boulevard. Additionally, as Mr. French mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, it's in the planning development for Montgomery Park. The existing Royal Farms is, which allows gas stations by right. The issue, why we're here before the board, is that the proposed expansion areas in the I-2 district, which requires a conditional use approval for a gas station. I've included also a wider aerial photo to show you the surrounding area. You can see it's industrial in character in the Carroll Camden urban renewal plan. There's the MTA bus depots on the northwest side, and then the I-95 on-ramps over here as well. The site plan that was approved by Site Plan Review Committee is included as the last exhibit in your file. It shows the pumps at issue and the entrance that's proposed to be retained. I guess Mr. French mentioned it, I just want to clarify for the board's, I guess, reference. There's an existing curb cut into the facility along Washington Boulevard that'll be closed. The proposal is to retain the existing entrance that's used by the adjoining premises, and that'll be the way that vehicles and the trucks can access the site. The Department of Transportation signed off on this plan. We've met with the plan examining folks to get their blessing on crossing property lines, and they've approved our plan. And it's subject to any need for a building modification if necessary. I've included in the exhibit an outline going through the factors that the board should consider for a request for conditional use approval. I can go through them if you like.
That's not necessary.
Okay, and then also there are 2 variances we're seeking. There's a requirement in the zoning code to provide a 5-foot landscape setback for gas stations. We can't provide that because we're retaining the existing condition, which has no landscape footprint. And also, there's only a 25-foot setback now between the canopy and Washington Boulevard. If we had the 5-foot landscape area, fueling trucks could not enter the premises and, I guess, have the right turning radius to access pumps. We are providing landscaping that exceeds the requirement of the landscape manual. There'll be 2 major trees and 62 shrubs on the new expanded premises. The other variance that might be necessary is for directional signs. They're shown on the plan, and they have been approved by the board in other cases you've heard.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, presumably there's a lease between the 2 separate property owners, is that correct?
Correct. Well, is it a lease or easement?
Either.
Oh. Well, so Royal Farms has an existing lease with the landlord on their existing premises at 1801 Washington Boulevard, and there's a lease, that's a contract to enter into a lease pending the board's approval to extend to 1821 Washington Boulevard.
And then what is the duration of that contracted lease, or the contract for a lease?
Again, Jeff Bainbridge, 20 years on the, whatever the second address is.
1821.
Thank you.
With options, and then the other one was a 20-year lease. We're probably 5 or 6 years into it. We have options renewal over that as well.
Okay.
Any questions for the board? I think that's all we need. Well,
I'm representing my parents who actually own the property at 1821 Washington Boulevard, where they're considering the expansion. They have considered also other options with the property. We were approached by a liquor store, restaurant, and we thought that this would be a better, for the neighborhood, a better use of that land. Thank you.
all right, thank you for offering that. Appreciate that. All right, unless there's anything you'd like to add, I think we have no questions, and we thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Calling the case 2019-271, 816 McKean Avenue, Damon Stubbs. Good afternoon, sir. This is a request to continue use as 2 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Go ahead and step over this way. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property was authorized last for use as a multifamily dwelling, but had been vacant for more than 12 consecutive months. The department has no objection to this application. Thank you.
Mr. Stubbs, can you tell us about your project?
So when I bought the house about 4 years ago, I own like 6 other houses in the 800 block of McKean, so I've been buying them as they come available. It's just that this house was 2 apartments, so when I applied for a building permit, he told me that I had to go through BMZA. So I did everything I needed to do to go through BMZA, and they pulled a card that was like 1957 or something. I'm not too sure on the date, but it was zoned for 2 apartments, but by me letting it set, because I was just storing materials in there. So my wife was like, you need to get the house put together now. So when I started doing that, I pulled permits for electric, plumbing, gas, HVAC, and all of that got signed off when I pulled a building permit to just hang drywall, new doors, and all of that. They said I need to go through zoning. So I did everything I was supposed to do to go through zoning. That's the only house in the block that got 2 apartments in it, so I just wanted to keep it the way it was. It's a lot easier for me.
Okay. I understand we have some, is there a history with this property, Mr. Baumgartner, of work done without permits?
Looks like in 2015, the property was cited. I can't tell from this sheet if it was.
It was so the front door got kicked in or something. So the city had fined me because I changed the front door. And I talked to the guy that, like the supervisor, I was like, bro, the front door was kicked in. If I would have left it open, you would have kept finding me. I just put another door on there and kept it moving. So now when I tried to pull a permit, they said I needed to go through the zoning board to get the house zoned back to be 2 apartments.
Okay.
So I took care of all of that. They wouldn't give me a building permit until I got all of this taken care of.
Understood.
And Mr. Chairman, the last authorized use for the property was as 2 dwelling units.
All right, very well. Okay. Any questions from the board?
Nope.
All right. Mr. Stubbs, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Calling the case of 2019-273, 2517 through 2521 Woodbrook Avenue. Debbie Ramsey. You, Ms. Ramsey?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good afternoon, ma'am. This is
Good
a
afternoon.
request to construct a 2-story building to be used as a community center. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Swear the parties?
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yeah, do we have any staff reports?
Yes. First, we have a letter from the Penn North Community Association that they do support this effort for an out-of-school time community center. The letter is dated September 13th, and planning has a report.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that the community center is a conditional use. The floor plan that was provided with the application includes a section on the first floor level, 590 square feet, designated as a theater in the preliminary floor plan. And the department notes that while this could constitute an accessory use area, and its limited use could be considered by the board to be an accessory use if used for rehearsals, live entertainment, whether or not for compensation, is not an allowed use in the residential districts where this property is located, this being in an R8 zoning district. There is also a question about the number of off-street parking spaces that could be provided as opposed to would be required, and the department suggests that there may be a variance needed for approval of this on the basis of off-street parking. The department recommends that approval of the application, if granted, be subject to the conditions that 1, no live entertainment occurs at this location, 2, days and hours of operation of the community center are compatible with the needs of the surrounding community, and 3, all construction improvements and landscaping are completed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, having heard the statements from Mr. French from planning, should we be favorably disposed towards your application? Are those conditions acceptable to your client?
Yes, they are. And before going any further, Mr. Chairman, may I also include, we have over 100 signatures from the community in support to be included in our
By all
folder.
means.
Thank you.
Certainly.
And also, we have present with us members from the board. If they, from the community, would you mind stand? Thank you.
Excellent. Question for you.
Yes, sir.
The auditorium-looking area that apparently is presented in the plans, what is the proposed plan or intent for that space?
Our attorney can speak to that.
I think it's going to be like sort of an assembly room, and the kids may practice and rehearse to do little dance moves and singing and that type of thing. Oh, Cynthia Sanders. Cynthia Sanders.
And I obviously raised that given the condition that there be no live entertainment in the premises. I can imagine a community center might want to hold a play for the community. Is that something that's contemplated or not?
Well, during summer camp, we usually have an assembly at the end, so, and the kids would sing and their parents are there. It's not something that's going to cause a lot of people coming in to pay tickets or anything.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can just offer something very quickly, the planning department's concern is very valid because there's a particular history of certain uses like community centers or banquet halls where they start as one thing and they become something else. So it can start as a community center and then all of a sudden become a venue for late night parties and things of that nature. So I think the planning department's concern is just that. For many different properties throughout the city, but as long as that's not your intended purpose.
501c3, so.
And also, if I can give you a little history about what Unified Efforts actually is. For the last 4 years, in 2015, Unified Efforts went into the Penn North community, and what we do, our mission statement is very simple, to provide and to reduce summer learning loss. We went into that community and we provided free out-of-school time programs and activities for the young people in that community. So for 4 consecutive years, that's what we have done. So our mission statement, it would not include any type of live entertainment or banquet halls. That's not what we do. Our focus is on the children, ages 5 through 17. This is what we've done. The community will vouch for that. So our intent is to make sure young people have a safe place to go when school's out for any reason, whether it's heating or it's too hot or professional development days, summer, extended times, winter breaks, summer breaks. This is what we do. Like I say, our mission statement is to reduce summer learning loss. That's what we do.
Wonderful. Thank you for that clarification. Any further questions from the board? All right. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Calling the case of 2019-294, 7500 through 7504 Hartford Road. Anthony Taylor. This is a request to use first floor as a driving school.
Well, actually, a satellite office, so it's just going to be an office.
Okay.
Because we're connected, we're partnered with a larger entity.
Yeah, let's do that. And hold on. Sir, are you here for the opposition to this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, come on up. We can have you all sworn at the same time. Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before you go forward, do we have any staff reports?
Yes, we have 2 letters from 2 residents on Oakcrest Avenue. They are basically against the appeal.
Bury that.
They are concerned with increased foot traffic in the late afternoon, evenings, and weekends throughout the neighborhood, increased noise from the increased number of people attending the driving school, an increased amount of trash, people walking on nearby properties, cars parked on our streets, and from the driving school, parents waiting to pick up their children, people who need to attend classes because of an accumulation of points, Parking is already limited. Increased traffic due to the driving school cars and increased possibility of auto accidents from student drivers. That's the end of my reports.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is in the office residential zoning district, in which the use of offices is a permitted use. However, the use defined in the zoning code as educational facility, primary and secondary, would need to be the one that this would fit into in order for the board to be able to consider this application, because the zoning code definition of educational facility, commercial, vocational, includes as part of its definition means a school conducted as a commercial enterprise such as a driving school. That is an explicit statement in the zoning code. On that basis, the Department of Planning recommends disapproval of this application if the board determines that the proposed use is a type of educational facility, commercial, vocational, which is a prohibited use in the OR1 zoning district where the property is located. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, you were about to indicate that your application suggests that this is a request to use this premises as a first floor as a driving school. That's what the application, I understand, says. You're now stating that
That it will be used for registration for driving school applicants. It's part of a larger entity, which we have 3 other offices, so this office would be strictly used for registration for our people in the city.
Okay, has that always been the intent for this location?
Yes, that was the intent. So I didn't write this down at BMZA, so they wrote this down for the classroom with the driving school, so it's just gonna be used as a satellite office. So what we're doing, we're partnering with private schools and things of that nature, so they'll be in the school, and then people who are using it to have their lessons, they'll be at one of our other locations. That location is strictly for a satellite office.
What are your other locations?
So we have a location in Aberdeen, we have a location in Harford County, well, Edgewood, and we have a location in Havre de Grace.
Okay, I'm sorry, say that again. You have Aberdeen?
Aberdeen,
Edgewood.
Edgewood, Havre de Grace.
Okay, so that's all Hartford County, right?
Right.
And so this is going to be a satellite office for your Hartford County driving school.
Correct. And then we'll be partnering with some schools in the city that are private schools to go inside of the schools.
So what happens at this location in Baltimore City, 7500 through 7504 Hartford?
Pretty much registration and paperwork.
There's no driving in Baltimore City?
No, it'll be at a school. It'll be at a school. There's no driving at that office.
But a school to be determined as to the location.
So,
Because presumably they wouldn't register in Baltimore City to drive 45 minutes north to Havre de Grace.
right, so it's schools in the city,
Okay.
like I&D and things of that nature.
And you're aware that your applications both say proposed use driving school. That's your language, not our language. So your application says driving school. Your
Yes.
permit application says driving school.
I thought that was all covered under one thing because it's an office for a driving school. So that's what it is. It's just an office for a driving school. If I don't put driving school anywhere on there, then it'd be like, hold up, you're registering people for a driving school. So I figured the language had to be in there because that's what it is. It's a registration office for a driving school.
What schools do you have contracts with?
So far, we've been in negotiations with I&D. It's a couple other private schools.
For instance?
Well, St. Francis will be one of the target locations because in Baltimore City, and that's something they took out of the public schools, but private schools still allow you to come in for them for their children to learn the skills that they need to start driving.
So you don't have any contracts?
Currently, we don't. We're working on the contracts because we didn't want to have the contracts going forward until we were allowed to put our location right there, because it would be kind of pointless to have that contracts and you do all of this legwork and then they say no.
So can I ask you?
Who's going to register at this office?
Who's going to register at this office? Our office staff. Talking about who's going to register the people?
You said it's for registration.
Correct. So the people that we have contracts with, that we start contracts with, we already been in talks with them. And that's something that they're willing to do, is have a driving school at their school. So that's something that they're willing to do. So this location will be for paperwork when they have to send stuff to the NBA and things of that nature.
Why wouldn't you just register the students at the school?
So what happens is, so basically, some people will be coming there to the office, right? Because then, you know, they'll put out advertisements saying this is our location. So you'll still have people who come in and sign up, but they'll be going to one of our other offices.
What people? I'm confused. I thought this was an office to register with
contracts that you have with schools, right?
Right, so also, we'll be signing people up for our other locations, people that are located in Baltimore City.
So people from Baltimore City are going to register at this office and then go do driving classes in Harford County.
Yes, some of those people will be going to our satellite offices because that's where our other main offices are located. We understand that we can't conduct the driving school portion in that office, so we just wanted to have space. We didn't have the space. We found the space. We wanted to use it as an office for our driving school, so that's why we're trying to put it in this location.
Do you have office space in Harford County?
Our office space in Harford County, we have space for the classrooms.
Right.
So, and then you don't want somebody from the city, and then they see it in Aberdeen. So what we're doing is we have people from the city, and we're connecting them with our people, because actually Edgewood is about 15 minutes up the highway.
Well, it's a little longer than that.
Yeah.
No, oh yeah, but usually I drive up there all the time. It doesn't take me that long.
Let me add to that. I grew up in White Marsh, which is between the city and Harford County, and I make that drive all the time. Aberdeen, Edgewood, and so it's not a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah,
And
from
so-
actually 64 to 74 is 10 miles. That's where the office is located in Edgewood.
Okay, so you have a school in Edgewood where people can come and register and do everything, one-stop shop, right? Right?
So, but we're actually,
Answer my question. Do you have a school in Edgewood and Aberdeen that's a one-stop shop where you can sign up, register, drive, do all that? It's a all-in-one, it's a comprehensive school, right?
Correct. We're trying to move into Baltimore City, though.
Okay. So you want to advertise, hold on, sir, you're not on the record. You want to advertise a school in Baltimore City, which zoning code prohibits you from operating a driving school. So what are you advertising in Baltimore City?
That we have the driving schools. We have the ability to service you for these driving needs. And then also we're going into the schools in the city. So either way, even if people are registering and signing up at the schools, we still have to have a location to send the stuff to NBA and to go through all our other paperwork and to store our paperwork and our files. We still need a location for that.
So why couldn't you just use your existing locations in Harford County and Aberdeen for that?
Because it would be easier to keep all the Baltimore City information in Baltimore City instead of have to transport personal and confidential information up to Aberdeen.
All right, I think I'm even more confused now, because if you for those potential drivers, student drivers, who are not affiliated with one of the private schools which you hope to contract with, they're going to register there, but they'll still have to drive somewhere else, right? Still have to go to one of your other locations to do the driving, right?
Well, excuse me. Let me introduce Mr. Singleton, if he can get on record, because
Wait, before I introduce Mr. Singleton, I want you to answer my question. Am I right that you have a set of students, potential driving students, who are going to come from a pool of private schools, right? That's what you're trying to do.
Correct.
And you're going to have others that are just residents of Baltimore City that you're hoping to capture to attend your driving school.
Correct.
That are not affiliated with those private schools. So they'll come in for their paperwork and register, but they still got to go to Harford County to drive.
Yeah, because other than that, they will have no knowledge of our schools out there.
Okay, hold on. You're not under oath, so.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Tatum. Right.
I'm
So,
sorry.
Miss-
Your full name, Tatum.
Tatum Singleton.
Okay, Mr. Singleton.
Right. So I'm one of the part owners of Best Choice Driving School,
Mhm.
and Mr. Taylor is one of our representatives. I think you got Mr. Taylor a little nervous, so that's why he's not explaining it right. So let me explain what happened. We're looking to partner up with schools in Baltimore City. This location, because they're students of the school didn't want foot traffic signing up and things of that sort happening during the duration of the school. So in order to get the contracts, we had to have a location for the parents to sign them up. So after school, they will be able to go. It has no connection with the Harford County location branch. It's us expanding to Baltimore City. And the only way that we can establish a base in Baltimore City with these schools is we have to have a location as one of the deals with the school that we have, that the parents can come and sign their kids up.
So
and register their
you
kids.
register their kids here in Baltimore City.
Yes,
Where does the driving school actually take place?
in the schools.
So you would go to IND or any of these other
Yes.
schools, and that's where the lesson would take place?
That's when the lesson would take place.
And what schools do you have contracts with?
I don't have that list in front of me, but we're in negotiation with about 7 schools.
And how many are under contract?
We haven't gotten the contract because of this yet. We have to secure our office.
Who are the 7 schools?
I don't know all of them offhand. I don't want to tell you something that I don't have that information offhand. But IND is one of the schools.
So what's difficult about this is that in an OR district, which is an office residential district, offices are allowed by right. So there's no hearing. You simply pay for a permit, get your permit. There's an inspection to make sure the property is safe. A purely business office use, again, is allowed by right. So regardless of what this board decides, if you go to the permits office and request a permit for an office, so long as the building or the space is used as an office, you would receive that permit. So I think there was just some confusion as to why the driving school aspect of it. I would clarify that there are a lot of different business office uses, right? So an office can be used in a lot of different capacities.
Right.
But the reason why you're here is that driving school thing, and the code specifically says you can't have a driving school here. So I think that's the source of the confusion.
Because it appears that the schools will contract with a driving school located at 7500 to 7504 Harford Road.
Right. I think all the way around the board, it was just miscommunication going on, where we were supposed to be in another location. And what happened with that other location was we fell into the same laws.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back to the schools and explained it to them, because we were supposed to have a full-fledged driving school and start in the schools. So that was where the communication broke down, because then we decided, we went back to the schools and then explained to the schools, well, in this particular district, you can't have a driving school. So what we decided was to open up an office branch, and we were always going to do it in the schools, but we wanted to open up a full-fledged driving school. And when we found out that we couldn't do it in this branch, we still didn't want to lose the deals with the schools.
Let me follow up with this question. It's been a while since I've been in driver's ed. There was a component that was classroom, right? And there was a component that was out on the road.
Right.
Will any driving student be at this Harford Road location at any point in time to open a book or to open a driver's manual or to open the traffic laws of the state of Maryland to say, this is what you do and not do? So
What will happen at this facility will be that they will probably be, we have 2 cars that's going to be assigned to that facility, and we take them to a assigned parking lot. It's a little tiny parking lot in that little district that we could never use anyway.
Where will they get that classroom component?
In the schools. In the schools. The schools will allow us to go in the schools to do the classroom component. The only part that will happen outside of the school is the driving time. But it won't happen. I think this young man's concern was that foot traffic would be there, and then driving would be taking over. The parking lot is really small.
But there will be times that a driving student goes to the Harford Road location to be picked up to go somewhere for their driving.
Scheduled times. Everybody wouldn't be bunched. It's not a bunch thing.
I think that's
a driving school.
critical. That's a driving school. Where's the actual driving instruction? Where does that happen?
In the schools. not at the location.
How about in the car, learning to drive the car? Where does that happen?
Well, what happens with that is it will be a scheduled time for the kids to be picked up. It can happen. They can be picked up at the school, but during times of driving time is usually Saturdays, Fridays, afternoon. So we take them and then we take them to a location where a school will allow us to do it in their parking lot for the training permitted.
What was the small parking lot you were referencing before?
Well, this satellite office, because we had to move it from another location to this location, it's a satellite office. So I think his biggest concern was foot traffic.
Please.
Sorry about that. I don't know what his concern
Where
is.
was the small lot that you were referencing?
Across the way from the satellite office. We have no intention on using that lot.
Across the street from the satellite office.
From this Harford Road location?
Yes. No.
So some kind of large building, office or something across the street, and they have a large parking lot. I don't know what that property is.
So kids kids come to your office,
Right.
they register. The classes are supposed to take place at the schools.
Right.
However, kids will come to this Harford Road location where there will be 2 cars assigned, and you will take the kids across the street for driving.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have scheduled times that these kids are scheduled for drive time. Drive time is not conducted in that area. It will be taken to a private parking lot, and their drive time will be done there,
I understand.
not in the community.
I understand what you're saying, even across the street, but that's still a driving school. Because if you have 2 cars assigned to that building,
Right.
and kids are assigned times to come to that location, and then you take them in those cars that are assigned to that building off, that is a driving school, which you cannot have in this location.
So the way it works, and you might be correct. I'm not going to go. But what I'm saying is that no kids will be doing any drive time from that location. They'll be taken to a assigned parking lot, and then they will experience their drive time.
Well, I think I understand where Ms. Middleton is going. It doesn't really matter where you take them.
Right.
Because you're taking them from the location in which you began, 7500 through 7504 Harford Road. If you have cars assigned to that location for driving, that is a driving school. You could take them to Texas. It would still be a driving school on Harford Road because that's where the students are going to get in the car to then go wherever else they're going to go. Unless they're driving on the premises of the schools that you're contracting with.
That's what I'm saying.
Which I can't imagine. Because again, and it goes back to my question about who you're contracting with. The school has to contract with someone. They're contracting with, what's the name of your school?
Best Choice Driving
Best
School.
Choice, which is located at 7500 through 7504 Harford Road,
Okay.
right? Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we
No.
hear from the opposition?
No, just in my mind, the way I imagine it is you have to have driving cars assigned somewhere, but it's nothing school related, nothing driving related happens from that office.
And you would have a sign outside of that office saying Best Choice Driving School, right?
But that's the name of the company. Yes.
Okay. Sir?
First of all, please bear with me. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the
You don't have to be. No
intricacies of
worries.
this.
No worries.
I'm first of all confused because I thought the owner of the building is the one that would
Sir, let's
apply
get your
for the zoning variance.
Let's get your name.
Oh, Michael McNulty. And I live across the street from the building and right next to the parking lot we're talking about.
Okay.
So either the tenant, the proposed tenant, or the owner could apply for this particular use. So it could be any
Could
of
be
those
either or.
three. Correct.
Okay, my concerns are, without boring you, Mr. Marani's business is 9 to 5 on weekdays only. I have the information of the 3 other businesses that are directly in contact with those streets.
What is his current business?
Excuse me?
What is the property currently used for?
Mr. Marani's property says builders and contractors on the door. They have 3 entrances on Oakcrest Avenue and 1 on Harford Road. The first floor is currently vacant. It says Sun Grace Realty right now. I think that was his last tenant. I never saw them there. I live directly across the street. Like I say, I didn't know that either or could apply. As I said, not being legally schooled, I read the sign hanging on the building, which is hanging on Oakcrest Avenue, not on Harford Road. Use portion of premises as with classroom for driving school. As with to me means use the parking lot as well as the building. Now to get into some of the recent past history.
Excuse me one second. We're talking about parking lots. Are you talking about a parking lot that's associated with that building?
No, that building is on the north side of Oakcrest Avenue. What the picture you have is facing Harford Road.
Yeah, right.
The side of that building is their main entrance. They work on the second floor, the builders and contractors.
Mr. Marani's office, what is that?
It's for, I think, his engineers.
Where is that?
Excuse me?
Where is it?
In the second floor of that building.
Of this building?
Yes, sir.
And this is the small parking lot that you were referencing?
That is across the street.
Okay.
He purchased additional property when he bought that building. He also purchased 7412, which is now a daycare center that he leases, which there are no problems whatsoever with them. The employees and the children are a joy. And property between both of those is owned by an attorney whose father also owned it. That is at 70, I'm trying to read my addresses here. 7416, and that is now Helping Hands. Jerry's Helping Hands, and it is strictly an office. There's 3 or 4 people that work there. It's an old dwelling house. They do strictly office work. It's either 3 or 4 of them there during weekday hours only. Work out 9 to 5, and never on weekends. And their clients don't meet them there. They just do their office business from there, as it was a legal office prior to that.
All right, so let me just get to the heart of the matter here. To the extent there was going to be an operating business there, for the sake of argument, let's say a driving school, what is your particular objection?
Well, Mr. Marani in the past doesn't live on the property. I don't know where he and his employees live. I don't think anywhere nearby. And he has no idea what goes on there in the evenings. He has leased or rented the first floor of his building twice that we know of, and possibly more times, with major bad ramifications happening, which I have a whole list of that I don't want to bore you with. But
Okay, don't need to know that. What type of business was there that presented a problem?
one of them was called, I have the names written down.
Well, regardless of what it's called, what did it do? What
They had parties there,
Okay.
basically.
All right. It was a party palace.
It was the Parlay Group and then another group called the Travel Group.
Okay.
They had weeknight parties occasionally. As I said, Mr. Marani and his staff are gone by 4 or 4:30 every day.
Okay.
They had weeknight and weekend parties that got completely out of hand. They served alcohol and sold alcohol without a permit or a license. And they destroyed property of myself, my neighbors, public urination and defecation, left large amounts of trash
Your
that were
concern is-
cleaned up
I'm sorry.
regularly by the residents because Mr. Marani doesn't show up until Monday morning.
Okay, and your concern is you don't want that to happen again.
And this sounds like it's a worst case scenario because there'll be more cars there also.
Okay.
Where these 2 cars that they speak of will be parked on that lot is about 8 feet from the side wall of my house. If anybody makes a mistake, the car will be inside my house.
Understood.
Mr. Marani, I have no personal problem with. We get along fine. I don't think he has any concept, even though my wife and others have complained to him personally and written letters. We've called the police numerous times, dozens of times over the years.
Okay.
And whether he believes us or not or cares or not, I think he's there to do business. He's also purchased another property now in the past year that was a dwelling house, and there is a sign on there from Long and Foster that says for lease office space.
Okay.
It has one parking
limit
place in the rear
let's
and no
limit it to
parking in
this.
front.
Let's limit it to 7500, 7504 Hartford Road. I think I understand your concerns regarding what may occur, what possibly could occur, given the past history of that location.
Yes, sir.
And businesses operating in that location, whatever those businesses might be called, whatever they say they are. So I think I understand. Is that pretty much sum it up?
Pretty much. We have a very solid, stable neighborhood. My wife has lived in our house her entire life, and it's part of her family legacy. I live there now with her.
Okay.
The house was built over 80 years ago.
All right.
Mr. Morani's been there about 9 years.
Okay. Well, I think I understand, and I think the board understands your concerns with regard to this proposed use. Because our critical interest is in what the objection is to what it is they're proposing. I think you've captured that. Anything you want to add other than what you've stated?
No, I appreciate you bearing with me. I'm not very good at public speaking.
You communicated very well, and we understood you very clearly.
The other problem that's not a zoning issue is we are right at the edge of the Northeast District of Baltimore City and the Baltimore County line. And as recently as last week, my wife and I were told on 5 different occasions by a 911 operator when we requested police that we lived in Baltimore County. We were calling from our house phone. We were one of the few people that still has a house phone. Finally, my wife called Parkville Precinct, which is on Taylor Avenue nearby, of Baltimore County Police. That person at the desk called 911, explained who she was, and intervened in the call. Then we finally got police response. Like I say, we're on the outer edges of the Northeast District.
Okay.
And it took over an hour. We've called police in the past and never received any. And with these parties, I'm in fear myself to go outside the house when they're going on. It's very large groups of people.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr.
Thank you.
Back to you, sir. Mr. Taylor, what else would you like to add?
So I have one question. So if nobody's leaving from the location and I'm strictly using it for office use for paperwork, then that'll be just fine. I can just get the permit, everything. Long as, for advertisement purposes, if a car is parked on the parking lot, that should be fine because it's not a driving school. So long as I'm just using it for office work, then that should be fine because I realized that this was an error because it's just being used as a satellite office. So as long as I'm just doing the office work there, nobody's driving out in the cars from there because the car can go to the school or whatever. So then that should be fine as office space, and I should be. I just go over there. I know you can't answer that, so I can just go get the office permit because if nothing's going on there but office work, then
It looks like you're thinking out loud. That's fine.
okay.
I don't need to necessarily hear it, but you presented an application for a driving school for a location that you're going to put a driving school sign on. And at some point, students from wherever they come from are going to have to come to that location and get in the car and go somewhere. That seems to be what the presentation is. And so you've heard from planning, we've stated, and you've had a prior experience apparently that you can't put a driving school in a particular district. You're free to do whatever it is you want to do, the things that you can get done without coming to zoning. But again, as Mr. Baumgartner indicated, you're here for a reason, and that reason, the impetus for that is the application that was filed for a driving school on the first floor of this building. And so I think we have enough to make a decision on that application as stated. I think that's where we are.
Okay.
All right?
Thank
you, sir.
Sorry, I left some things out, but thank
It's
you for
okay.
bearing
Thank you,
with
sir.
me.
Appreciate it. Calling the case of 2019-296, 3108 through 3110 O'Donnell Street, Adam Carballo. Good afternoon again, Mr. Caballo. This is a request to subdivide 3108 and 3110 O'Donnell Street into two single-family dwellings and construct a two-story rear addition, third-floor addition, in addition to existing detached garage in rear of 3110. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department has reviewed this application, notes that the purpose of the subdivision of the property is to return an original lot line that was removed by consolidation of the lots in 1992. So therefore, this will be a minor subdivision lot split, as it's referred to, which does require approval by the Planning Commission. The Department of Planning recommends that approval of this application be subject to the condition that the subdivision and all subsequent construction and alteration of the existing structures on this property be completed in accordance with the subdivision and development plans approved by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Mr. Carballo, if we were to be favorably disposed towards your application, are those conditions stated by planning acceptable to your client?
Yes, sir.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Sorry.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Actually, Mr. Carvalho was previously sworn.
Right. Okay, tell us about your project, Mr. Carballo.
I was approached by the contract purchaser. This was originally two adjoining row houses, middle of group. As Mr. French mentioned, in 1992, they were consolidated into one property. Both properties have been sold or in the process of being sold. The contract purchaser, who is my client, is purchasing or has purchased 3110. He wishes to return it back to a single-family house, which is the original intended construction of the property. And I think when it was originally built, sometime maybe around 1900 through 1992, it was a single-family house. We're just simply turning it back into that. As far as the renovation, this has an existing detached garage at the rear, effectively a carriage house. Our intention is to, reconstruct or widen the carriage house, and we also intend on adding a rear addition to the house, which would exceed our lot coverage limitation. In addition, we do plan on having a third floor. However, the third floor, we're not exceeding the height limitation or any setbacks. We're actually, it's not actually part of our appeal. It's, but it is we are intending on adding a third floor to the property, but it's simply a matter of right, and it's not part of our appeal. Our appeal here today is pretty much restricted to lot coverage limitations only. The lot coverage would be in sort of keeping with adjoining property owners and adjoining properties along the 3100 block of O'Donnell.
The garage that, how many cars can this garage hold?
It's currently a single car garage. I believe the lot width is only 15 feet. So technically it would still be only a one car garage. However, the family that I'm working for has two small children. They have bicycles and things, and they want to keep them in the garage. So widening the garage really won't add any additional vehicular parking, but it would add some needed storage for bicycles and that kind of thing for their children.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any further questions?
No.
How wide is the alleyway in the back?
It's a 15-foot alley. There are adjoining other properties that have detached garages as well as parking pads off of that alley.
Anything else, Mr. Baumgart?
The usable space of yard between the rear of the house and the garage, how wide is that? How deep is that?
It's approximately 10 by 15 feet, 150 square feet.
It's currently grass or a deck or
kind
a
of
porch.
paved over. I think there's a little unmaintained, I guess I'll say, but it was I believe brick. Has some tall grass coming out of it, but the intention would be some type of a patio of some sort.
presentation. Unless anything else you'd like to add?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Carvalho, for your presentation.
Thank you.
I think this gentleman has.
I'm sorry, he's the oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
You're the opposition? Oh, okay. That's what's confusing me. The opposition usually lines up on that side. If I wasn't clear, I apologize. Let's hear from you, sir.
The only thing I'm opposing is,
What's your name, sir?
my name is Mark Alexander Iwashu. Mark Alexander Iwashu. It's EWACHIW.
Okay.
Mark, M-A-R-K. The property we're talking about was originally owned by my grandparents and my parents, and then my brother he actually stole the properties from the will. But that's immaterial here. The material thing I'm here is for, because I live at 12, pardon me. I live at 3112. Parents owned all 3 houses, and I was willed that house, and my little brother stole that one too from me, put his name on that too. But the thing I'm here for is I'm opposing the 3rd floor, because even the neighbors, I got doctors that live on the block and all, it's gonna interfere with their decks up there, and I was thinking about putting a deck up too on my roof, towards what's going on. That's the reason I'm here. The doctors couldn't be here, the ones on the block, because they're working, they couldn't get off of work, because they're teaching. But I'm trying to represent them as much as I represent myself. That's it.
Okay, so you said it's going to interfere with what their...
With the view and stuff on the roofs.
And how many stories is your house?
Mine is 2. The house is pretty, put this way, it's pretty big, and I got a huge yard. I mean, I could fit 8 cars in my yard. That's how big my yard is.
So either fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon the property owner, the property heights in this district can go up to 35 feet, what's called by right.
Well, that's what I heard, and if it happens, it happens. I can't change it. I'm not here to oppose anything towards, and I'm opposing the height. I just don't want it to interfere with anything. If it goes through, fine. If it don't, it don't. I'm trying not to let it go through if possible.
Okay.
But it's just the thing about it is, going through all this trouble, because I had 7 sisters and 3 brothers, and the houses that he's putting back together the way it was, we had a door through the wall, and we all had our own bedrooms, and we were a Ukrainian family that grew up in them 2 houses. Then my father bought the house next door to one I live in, and I raised 4 children up in there, and my children, they live in Hawaii and Florida. They're doctors, they're captains, Navy and stuff like that. They're all good kids, and all my girlfriends and all passed away. I'm by myself, and I'm not actually disabled because my feet collapsed. They chiseled 2.5 inches of bones in my feet. Then I get off crutches. I had a heart attack. Then I went through bladder cancer. I went through a lot of stuff. I'll be 63 years old. I never thought I'd be retired, but 90% of the people I work with, between the Washington Post, News America, and some papers, are dead.
Okay.
Sir,
I'm going to bring you back to this location. I appreciate that history. I understand. It's very personal to you, and I get that.
And what my little brother did to everybody.
I get that too, and that's a very personal thing, and I feel for you in connection with that. Let me just ask Mr. Carvalho, with regard to the deck going up, or the proposed deck.
Or proposed 3rd floor.
3rd floor. Okay. What's the height that you're seeking to go to?
We will be in compliance with the 35-foot height limitation.
Very well. Thank you. All right. I think we got the gist of all of your opposition, and thank you for that additional information, Mr. Carvalho. And if there's no other questions, I think we're done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to me too.
Absolutely.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Calling the case of 2019-298, 6401 East Lombard Street. Jay Lee.
Hi, my name is Jay Lee. My partner is Johnny Salmon.
Mr. Lee, this is a request to add live entertainment to existing golf driving range. Is that correct? Okay. Swear the parties, please.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give this
we have any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lee, tell us about this very interesting project to add live entertainment to
Okay,
golf driving range.
thanks. Yeah, that's the that license came from the Nick's Seafood at Cross Street Market. I used to own that, that when I closed down last year, some December. So I transferred the location to, the driving range and like the entertainment, Thank you very much.
Well, tell me about what this is. What is the entertainment that you're seeking to add to the
I'm
driving
trying
range?
to do, private party about 20 people, something like that. Also, I put it in the golf simulators, there, so people, right now the field, golf business overall United States slow down because young kid they don't play anymore. So my business slow down too. So young kid, they love some computer game like that. If you hit the ball, like look at the projector, see where ball fly, like that kind of stuff. That's why, in case some 20 people coming, they singing, I cannot, stop like that. That's not the main target. Main target is a golf simulator like that.
So is this a simulated golf driving range?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're no longer hitting live balls
No,
like
no,
I
no,
used
no,
to do at
it's
that
still there.
location a few
No,
years
still
ago.
there. It's still there. I just put it in the 5 golf simulators. I have 30 tee box, 25 tee box is open, but right there 5 tee box put in the golf simulator. So just add one to it.
Okay.
Nothing else. Yeah. Come on, just have to take care of it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. What Mr.
Your
Lee's
name?
trying to
Your
say-
name again?
Johnny Salmons.
Okay,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Salmons.
sir. What he's trying, Salmons, S-A-M-M-O-N-S? What Mr.
Prove it.
Yeah, Mr. Lee, that's what we would like to do there. Also, so in case we have parties, small parties, and we don't want no electric guitars or nothing like that, but if they bring a guitar, something like that, yes, and we would rent the hall out for weddings, things like that. That's why we would like to have the entertainment license.
Did I hear a liquor license was transferred from the market?
A beer and wine.
I applied it. I think they're gonna post on next week. I called the liquor board today, so they plan to post about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then I have a hearing. So that's why just before that, zoning board have approved the entertainment. I'm gonna apply there as entertainment too.
So if your intent is if someone comes out to the driving range with their clubs, then they can also have a beer or whatever?
I have a clubhouse and 150-foot canopy, so you have plenty place for some safety-wise, because clubhouse and then that's the heating area. So safety-wise is fine.
Yes, there is a clubhouse with the tee box faces out towards Patterson High, and then we also have the building.
Is it operating now?
No.
Okay.
I would prove the zoning first, then I can apply for the some liquor license. When I transfer liquor license, have the zoning proof first, then I can put it in the live entertainment there.
Do you have proposed hours for the operation of this business?
Excuse me, sir?
Your proposed hours?
Hour 5 p.m. 5 p.m. to about 11, like that.
The later time is more significant to me when I'm asking.
Bad case 11. I usually target over 5 to 10. That's what I'm thinking.
And Mr. Chairman, if I'm understanding this correctly, there's currently an application to transfer a license. Is that
Yes,
correct?
so from the seafood in the Cross Street Market, I crossed down. That license transferred to theirs.
So the liquor board will have to approve that, number one, and number two, any live entertainment associated with a liquor license. The liquor board also has to approve that. So there's
Right,
another layer
right.
there.
So we have to do the zoning first, then apply for the some liquor board have to approve. That's why I call you first.
Okay, so this raises a question for me. If you don't have the liquor license yet,
Just beer or wine, just not liquor. Okay.
beer, wine,
Right.
which is alcohol, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that yet, And when you do get it, you have to go before the liquor board to get that live entertainment. What do we have the authority to grant?
So essentially, we have the authority to grant the live entertainment on the land, on the real property itself.
Okay,
The liquor portion just adds one more layer
Got it.
of safety to ensure that
That's
the
why,
liquor portion.
I have to have a use and occupancy permit, so that's why I come with change the zoning, yeah.
Okay.
Where on this photograph is the clubhouse?
Yes, sir.
And does it presently exist?
It's, right here, this whole,
Right here, I explain,
most of this is the canopy, but right there.
right here, I explained to you, this is my property, this is a trucking company, this is something seafood, wholesaler, this is oil company. So all of the residential is more than half mile. So this is my property, this is trucking company, this is some oil company. So that kind of heavy industrial park.
I understand, and his focus is where is the clubhouse, and because it's hard to really.
I don't see a clubhouse.
Oh, yeah, yeah. This is white buildings. White buildings there. I think his picture is better.
Right here, this,
That's the canopy and clubhouse.
where it's coming out further than the canopy.
Okay, let me ask you a question. The clubhouse has doors that can be fully enclosed, so that anybody in the clubhouse would be not outside, right? There's not a free area to walk back and forth in. It's been a while since I've been there, but I don't remember a clubhouse, I gotta say. Okay. Has the clubhouse always been there?
Oh, yes, but I didn't open it because usually I'm not there. So
Okay.
they have a token changer machine. There are people using it.
Okay.
So there's my plan. Some. Did you see here? We're talking not for the left side of the T-box and the street.
Okay, okay. And it's not operating presently?
Not yet, but I'm starting. This is first step.
Understood.
I get the use and occupancy permit.
And this clubhouse that I don't see, is it fully enclosed? All four sides?
Yes.
So is this space here?
When you, oh, you're on this, are you on here? Yeah.
Yeah.
This where the canopy is, apparently, there's a. what
Oh,
he's
the
saying
clubhouse
that-
is a part of this?
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if this helps the board at all, a banquet hall is also a conditional use before the board in this zoning district. So in case the board wants to consider what's been described as a banquet hall, the board also has the authority to approve that if it decides to do so.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, gentlemen?
That's, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah, this is only one driving range in the city. So this is the first time we tried this kind of concept. The most driving range, they hit the ball, they're leaving. But I'm gonna add on the some little golf simulator and driving range. So I think very interesting projects. Please help me.
Understood. Okay.
It isn't closed, though, totally locked up.
Okay. Any further questions? I don't think I know enough to ask them. Good?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you for,
Yeah, I'm fine.
thank you for your presentation, gentlemen.
Is it approve or not?
Good luck to you.
Oh, you
Thank you.
you have to decide later or approve or?
We will be deliberating at the end of this whole session, so
Okay.
you'll have to, if
All
you would
right.
like to wait, you're welcome to. Otherwise, you can call and find out what our decision is.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Calling the case of 2019-299, 1037 Light Street, LaQuanta Baldwin. Ms. Baldwin?
Hi.
Hi, how are you? This is a request to use ground floor as a daycare center, is that correct? Swear the witness.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, do we have any staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department received the original application and reviewed it, and noted at that time that there was not a description of the number of staff who would be providing services for the children under care. Also, that there was, because of that, an uncertainty as to the amount of parking variance that might be needed, as this property is essentially a landlocked property. It does not have the ability to provide off-street parking. Also, there was no indication of a specific drop-off and pickup area, and because of the configuration of this site, it being only 16 feet wide, there is no easy way to provide a passenger loading zone only in front of this particular property. At that time, the department was recommending deferral of the hearing. Since that time, Ms. Baldwin has provided additional information to the department indicating there would be 13 employees of the child care center, and therefore, on the basis of the calculation of 1 space required for every 4 employees, 3 parking spaces would be needed, but as noted, none can be provided on site. The issue of the drop-off and pickup area remains the primary concern of the department at this point, as this is a particularly busy near a particularly busy intersection, also a somewhat narrow part of Light Street. It is fairly close to the cross-street market, so it's an area with a lot of traffic. The department is very supportive of the idea of having additional child care facilities in Baltimore City, but believes that this particular application needs additional review by the Parking Authority of Baltimore City and the city's Department of Transportation as far as the adequacy of drop-off and pickup in safety for the children concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Ms. Baldwin, is it accurate that there would be 13 employees for this location? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. And the number of children, I understand to be 44?
Yes.
And I also understand the hours during which the pickups and your hours are expected to be between 6:30 and 6:30 a.m., 6:30 in the evening?
6:30 in the morning till 9, and
9
then
a.m.?
And I'm sorry, 9 a.m. And then 3 to 6:30 in the afternoon. In the evening, excuse me.
The times that you're saying, are those the pick-off, drop-off times? Okay, so really you're going to be open from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Is that what you asked me? I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's inartfully asked, so don't worry. Okay. Can you speak to the concern raised by planning with regard to pickup and drop-off location?
Yes. Are you asking me to tell you what I'm in the process of doing, or how you think I was?
I want to know
how
it is you intend to address the concern
of
the busy area, the limited off-street parking, and pickups and drop-offs in those times, which would be fairly congested.
So we have, during those hours of the 6:30 a.m. to 9 o'clock hour, there is a truck stop there, and the truck stop does allow at least 2 cars to park directly in front of the building. I have spoken with Mr. Francis, and I have submitted my application so that we can try to get this approved, so that we can have that designated area also as an alternative spot for the parents to use as a designated parking space.
Well, that would be the designated pickup and drop-off?
And this allows the parents 5 minutes to get the children in and out and get them back in to our building, and move their vehicle, and then allow another parent to arrive and within 5 minutes to drop off and move their vehicle as well.
And that's for a space of, that space allows for 2 vehicles, right?
Yes.
But you're going to be open to the 44 children?
Yes.
Suppose everybody shows up at one time, what happens?
That's a good question. There are other spaces that are on the street that they will be able to park, because you have the open spots that, people can park. But we would designate those 2 spots just for the parents. So they are able to park in other spaces on the street, on Light Street.
Right, because there's street parking on Light Street, right?
Yes.
But I think one of the main concerns is that since Light Street is really just 2 streets, two lanes, right?
Yes.
So the question is, or I guess one of the concerns is by having a daycare facility with 44 children, if, as Mr. Chairman has stated, let's say 44 families show up at once and they're all driving, and between 6:30 and 9 a.m. it's high volume traffic for people trying to get to and from work, and then you have 44 families trying to drop off their children. How can you effectively manage that without impacting traffic in such a way, and also making sure that the children who are being dropped off at that hour and then later picked up, in the afternoon, that there's safety measures in place for these kids and families?
I understand. I will say this. I don't think that 44 people would come. I think 80% of our parents will be walking. I think that they will be planning strategically because of the limited parking space. I have worked in several facilities in Baltimore City. A lot of the parents that are in that community, they plan their day out very carefully, knowing that they do have to walk. From what I've experienced in other facilities that I worked in right in the community, and 80% of those parents do walk their children and pick them up. So I do not anticipate 44 at all at one time, and this is why I have put in the application to try to get that specific 2 spots, zoned for us as well.
And the 44 kids, what's the age range?
So we are infants to 2 years old only.
Okay.
So this looks like a sign for a truck loading zone,
Yes.
and it services which buildings or which businesses?
The building that would be next to us would be the Diablo, I believe, when speaking with Mr. Francis this morning. The donut shop.
Is this the building pictured in the photo?
I can't see.
This photo we have, is this your building?
Yes.
And
And next door is the donut shop.
So every business in that stretch has its own no parking, truck loading?
No. Did you ask me, did every building have their?
But you said it's specifically for this donut business. What about the other businesses?
Oh, I can't answer that question, I'm sorry.
I'm guessing that the loading zone is for all the businesses in that block,
I'm not sure.
which means that it won't be available. Or might most likely won't be available.
So their hours are 10 in the morning. We want specifically 6:30 to 9. If not 6:30 to 9, 6:30 to 10. So we would not interfere with their hours once they begin pulling up.
Unless their deliveries are made before they open for business, which is what a lot of companies have.
So I'm just assuming, because I've not asked this question, I'm assuming then so from 6:30 to 9. So is it, because it specifically says 10 a.m., so that's when you are not allowed to park there for the purpose of that truck, is that correct? So they can load and unload during the hours that's posted? Is that correct?
I don't know, I can't read.
I don't know what the sign
I
says.
don't know what the sign-
What is your understanding of what the sign
It
says?
says 10, and I want to make sure that I know the end time. But I do know 10 a.m. is the time that they start, dropping up, making a delivery.
Well, wait a minute. The sign says no parking,
Truck loading zone,
what time?
10 a.m.
It only says one
So
time?
10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday.
Okay, so it says it prohibits parking from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Yes.
So trucks could be parking there at your later pickup time.
And then I was also told that they may not even use that, and to speak with the donut shop to see if they're still using it. Mr. Francis said within the 5 years that he's worked there, he's not even sure if they use it anymore. So that's something else that I need to confirm.
Ms. Baldwin, is there a school next to this property?
There is, and it does not interfere with us. I have 2 letters here of support, one from the principal who is in support of us adding that asset to the community.
Do they have a parking lot?
They're on they're not even on Light Street. They are on another
They're off of East Cross Street, but do they have an area where their employees park or anything like that?
I'm not even sure if they come on outside. I'm not sure, but I do know that they are behind. You can't get the parents stay. From my understanding, from my understanding, all the parents go directly onto that main street where the school is located.
And you don't know whether or not there's a parking lot associated with that school?
No, I would have to go up there or give the principal a call.
I'm sorry. You said you have letters of support. Do you want to submit those for the record?
I can.
It's up to you.
I can.
Federal Hill Prep School, they indicated that they understand you want to open a daycare in the neighborhood, and they agree that the daycare center for children would be a great asset. Do they know the location where you intend to open it?
Are there any other daycare centers on Light Street?
No.
So you'd be at?
And there's a letter from WLC Design. Where is WLC Design?
He is located in Oni, Maryland.
Okay. What is the relationship of this individual to?
I actually was working at another center as assistant director, and I work closely with his family. And he is also, we have also done some business things as far as homes, property, et cetera.
Okay, but do they have any knowledge of the location, the
Yes.
surrounding areas at this location,
Yes,
1037?
he does.
What is that knowledge?
What do you mean, what is the knowledge?
Well, his business is in Olney.
Mhm.
Someone who supports you doing this
Yes.
project. My question is, other than them supporting you personally,
Mm-hmm.
they have any idea about the circumstances of the parking, the issues, and all that?
Yes. We've talked, we discussed, we've met, we've had meetings about it, and this is what led to asking him to give a letter of support. He's viewed the location where 1037 is. He actually is doing a project right here in Baltimore City. I think it's in Fayette. So we've thoroughly discussed the dynamics of everything.
Have you discussed this with any other business owners?
The association board, Federal Hill, Beth, and they are on board. At this time, I am in pursuit of trying to get the parking arrangement. So they are on board. I actually just received a text message from her in reference to keeping her informed of the next steps.
You said so they're aware of your
Yes, I've met with
efforts.
them.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Only one of us can talk at a time. Efforts to get the zoning, to get the designated parking spaces? And is there support contingent upon you getting those spaces?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
They're aware of your efforts trying to get those designated spaces that you described earlier. Is there support for your project contingent upon you getting those spaces? For example, if you don't get them, are they still going to be in support of you putting the location?
The
there?
daycare?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Have they raised any concerns about parking and drop off and
Yes.
pick up?
Yes. So that's why she wants me to keep her informed. That was one of the concerns. That's my only obstacle right now.
So you're proposing 44 children for this daycare. I'm looking at the floor plan that you submitted. Looks like there are 2 infant rooms, a toddler room, 3 toddler rooms. Is that correct?
It should be 2 infant rooms, 2 toddler rooms, and 1 2-year-old room.
Wait a minute.
Do you have prior experience in the daycare industry?
I do.
Right. And the amount of square footage here, in your experience, is sufficient for 44 children?
So far, this is a shell. Before I can move forward to put any money into it, I have to go through the process of meeting with Office of Child Care, which I've done. Pre-site visit has been taking place already. She's approved it as far as the pre-site visit. Then I would have to go through all the other steps. At this time, she has found that this has been an ideal place for a center. She's did a thorough walkthrough with it, and she really thinks it would be a good fit. As far as the 44, it depends because I could get less. Prior to me coming here, I just left the OCC, Office of Child Care orientation. They thoroughly explained, depends on what your setup is like. I may not get that 44. It's based on the footage that you have per child. So it is fairly, because I used to have a commercial center for over 11 years in Baltimore County, Alpha and Omega Quality Child Care. It really depends on the square footage, and this is really a small center. So it may not even get 44. If I get 40, I'm happy with that. It just pretty much depends on once we put the walls up. So
Is there outdoor space?
it is. It is secured. There's a nice big backyard. Right now it looks like a jungle. It looks, it needs a lot. It has a brick wall, maybe 7 feet, a gate right over it. It's very secure. Right now it needs a lot of TLC, so I'm really excited to get out there and cut that jungle down and get this place open for the children.
Mr. Baumgartner, given what we have of the plans, again, I recognize apparently there are walls and things that need to be outfitted and put up internally. So we're not in a position at this point to determine the square footage.
True. The state of Maryland determines the number of children and the ages of those children based upon the square footage, the available space, and the amount of employees that are proposed. And then they would require a certain number of employees depending upon the age of the children being looked after. The board generally defers to the state's expertise on that, but we certainly have the ability to limit occupancy just based on a general size of a lot and or building concept. But we would, again, if the state licensing agency approves a higher number, the applicant could certainly come back to the board and request a change based upon the state of Maryland's assessment that more children would be allowed or less.
How'd you come up with the number 44?
Based on ratio and based on overhead. I don't want a large, I'm 43. I don't want a large group of children. I've had 100 kids. I ran a business by myself for 11 years with my employees. I don't want that anymore. I want something that I can focus on. It's not too big. So that's why I said if OCC was to drop the numbers, it would not hurt the budget, and it definitely would not upset me at all.
Okay.
All right. More questions?
No.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add, ma'am?
Oh, thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Calling case number 2019-301, 745 West Fayette Street. Alyssa Dumsall.
Good afternoon. If we can wait just a second, they're in the hallway speaking with members of the community.
This right?
None known.
Okay.
There might be some in the room.
All right. None known or stated.
Right, I was going to cover that.
Based on safety and parking.
It's too up in the air.
She should have spread it out.
we good?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Again, this is 2019-301. Address is 745 West Fayette Street. Ms. Domzal, this is a request to consolidate 760 and 762 West Baltimore Streets, 5 and 9 through 25 North Fremont Avenues, 745 through 763 West Fayette Streets, this northwest corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard and West Baltimore Street, and certain road beds, and to construct a 10-story building containing a research center, office space, retail space, and restaurant. Is that accurate, ma'am?
That is accurate.
Okay, thank you. We could swear the parties.
Raise your right hands, please. Swear or affirm. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department has reviewed this application and has also been working actively with the applicant team on the development of this site. The property at the time that the Planning Department wrote a comment memo as of September 6th of this year was in the Poppleton Urban Renewal Area, which plan restricts the proposed uses to those authorized in an applicable planned unit development, which is known as the Biopark Planned Unit Development. The applicant was working at the time this was written on obtaining some repeal or amendment to these particular documents in order to allow this particular development to proceed without the restriction imposed by those particular documents. The department is recommending approval of the application, subject to the condition that all construction, improvements, and landscaping are completed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning, provided that the Poppleton Urban Renewal Plan, the Maryland Biopark Planned Unit Development, and the R8 zoning district applicable to one portion of this property site are no longer applicable to the properties comprising the Biopark Gateway site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Ms. Domzal, are those conditions acceptable to your client? Should we be favorably disposed to your
Yes, they
project?
are.
All right. Tell us about your project, ma'am.
Right. Wonderful. We are here on appeal to construct a 10-story, 340,000 square foot building on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and West Baltimore Street. The building is the next phase of development for the Biopark. It's primarily going to be laboratory and office with retail and restaurant space on the ground floor. We have an approved address of 4 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and this building will be the largest commercial building on Martin Luther King. It will activate the streetscape and provide a gateway between the Biopark and the rest of the UMB campus and the remainder of downtown just across MLK. As Mr. French mentioned, we are in a BSC, a Bioscience Campus zoning district. I do just want to sort of bring current the application materials that we submitted. When we submitted, there were 3 land use bills and 3 street closing bills that were sort of all in various states. And the street closing bills have all been signed by the mayor. And the 3 land use bills were all approved by the council last night on third reader, so they're before the mayor for signature. So that means that we have, or we will have site control of all of the parcels that were mentioned, including the former alley parcels, and that the entire site is BSC. There is now no planned unit development, and there's no URP that's relevant because it's the boundaries of the URP were modified. So the only land use controls relevant right now is the BSC zone. We are requesting variances for building height and off-street parking. Before we get into the variances, with me today is John Laria of my firm, Jane Schaub of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and Greg Herlong of Wexford Science and Technology. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Schaub to give a background of the Biopark and where we are with the project. Before I do that, we have a letter from the Southwest Partnership that we just received this morning. We'd like it read into the record. Do you want me to do that, or do you want? Okay, great. All right. To whom it may concern, the Southwest Partnership, Inc., a partnership of 7 neighborhoods and 6 anchor institutions, is writing to inform the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals of the longstanding commitment by the Biopark, the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and Wexford Science and Technology to establish a community fund to benefit neighborhood-based projects. This fund will be overseen by the presidents of the 7 neighborhoods and managed by the Southwest Partnership. This relationship has been developed over the last few years and is directly related to the desire of the anchor institutions to see priority projects in the 7 neighborhoods come to fruition. We are excited that this fund will be functional over the next several months. The Gateway project, as currently proposed for development, is part of the master plan approved several years ago. Over the past several months, this plan has been presented to the larger community at least 4 meetings, and community input was received and considered as the planning moved forward. We hope that this information is helpful in assisting the BMZA arrived at their decision. Sincerely, Michael Sipe.
Great.
Jane? Oh, yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jane Schaub. I'm AVP for Economic Development at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and have had the great fun and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the University of Maryland Biopark since we launched the biopark with the opening of our first building in 2005. So for those of you who haven't been over to visit us, please come, but also give me 2 minutes, if you will, to tell you what we do there. We are a 14-acre university research park. We were established by UMB for the main purpose and follow this as our business and driving mission to bring life science and biopharmaceutical companies into Baltimore City to work with the university to make us a better research enterprise, to do collaborative work with us, to do clinical trials with us, to develop products with us, to do what our mission is, improve the lives of people and particularly our patients. So that's the deal. That's what we're doing. Where have we gotten since we launched? Today we've got 40 companies and institutes and Baltimore City Community College and the Smith School of Business offering an MBA in the biopark. We have today about 1,200 people working in the biopark. We have been fully leased to companies such as I described for the past 3 years. So it's been work with the companies you've got and work hard with them, but where's the new blood? Where's the new opportunity? We desperately need this building that Wexford is going to bring forward to not complete. We are not complete. We will not be complete after this building. We'll have about 5 more buildings. We'll be back up here talking with you about, but to continue this very important mission that's bringing investment in the city, great things to UMB, and I hope that my neighbors agree, some really good things to the surrounding communities. When we were established, UMB put together a 501c3 corporation. We're called the Research Park Corporation, not very fancy. We have 10 external directors who guide that work, and it's that entity that has been the overall developer for the project and pretty much the owner of the land. That board put in place, when we started, I'll call it a little fee. Any company that, and some of you will remember this, any company that locates in the University of Maryland Biopark pays annually 25 cents per square foot rented. So that, in essence, as my neighbors know, is pretty much the source of the funds that Mr. Sipe described in his letter. So it would be an ongoing investment year after year coming from the new building that would go directly to the community. So thank you. If you have any questions, just pop them up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Greg Herlong. I work for Wexford Science and Technology. I've had the pleasure of working on this project for about 2 years now. It's exciting to see it starting to come to fruition. As Jane mentioned, the 2 existing buildings that we have had a part in developing in the biopark are fully leased. That's about 330,000 square feet. This proposed building is phase 1 of a 2-part project and would deliver approximately the same amount of square footage as the existing buildings that we have. Jane mentioned we have 1,200 employees. We look to continue expanding that in the University of Maryland Biopark. We view this as a critical next step on the west side of Baltimore for the biopark. Very, very visible on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and that's by design. A lot of people's interaction with Baltimore City is just on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to go north and south. Right now on the east side with the University of Maryland, people look at that sometimes, they don't know the biopark exists currently on the west side, and they say, well, that's all the commercial activity on the east side of Martin Luther King, and on the west side of Martin Luther King, it's just houses, and there's not much going on there other than residential activity. And we're looking to change that. We're looking to encourage people, more people, to come visit the west side, visit the biopark, and work in the biopark, and work in Baltimore City. So we're very supportive of the project. As I mentioned, it's the first phase, would be about 340,000 square feet lab office building with some retail on the ground floor, restaurant on the ground floor, as well as parking for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Herling, I have one additional question. Do you have an approximate amount of the investment in this project?
Sorry, this first phase is approximately $190 million between the building and the parking facility. Thanks.
As I mentioned, we are here for two variances, one for building height and one for parking. For the height variance, we are permitted 150 feet by right in a BSC zone. The proposed building is 185.66, we'll call it 186 feet. I have just sort of two minor corrections from planning's memo that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. The planning's memo had said that the height above 150 feet is permitted by conditional use. That's actually only if it's residential, and because this is a commercial building, we're talking about a variance, and we're prepared to discuss the variance standards. And the other piece pertains to the rezoning. As I said, this entire site will be BSC. There was a line in planning's memo that the variance only applied to the former R8 portions, but it's applicable across the site in all of BSC. So as I said, the proposed building is just under 186 feet in height. Just a bit of context on that number. The height from the mean curb level on Martin Luther King to the rooftop is 165 feet. And then there is HVAC equipment and a screening wall for about another 21 feet, which brings it to a total of about 186 feet. The reason it's counted is just under Title 15 of the zoning code. If the HVAC and screening takes up more than 25% of the area of the roof, they count in the building height. But so when we're talking about the building, we're really talking about 165 feet to the roof line, and then set back and screened the HVAC equipment required for the laboratory use. So we are only talking about that increment between 150 feet by right and 186 feet for the variance, so a 36-foot variance. The reason for the extra height is really about the laboratory use. Laboratories have higher ceilings, and they have a significant requirement for HVAC components on the roof, much more than would be required for a multifamily or any other type of commercial building. This is a uniquely located site for all the reasons that Ms. Schaub and Mr. Herlong mentioned, that this is a really uniquely located site to connect the biopark with downtown and with the rest of the university. There's a compelling need to connect the university with the life science companies and the research centers at the biopark. And so really, laboratory and office use is the use for which there's a compelling need in this building. And that sort of drives the dimensionality and the height and the structures on the roof. It would impose a practical difficulty to build only by right, because our laboratory space simply wouldn't be as functional or as appealing to our bioscience tenants. And it's really, as Ms. Schaub said, at the core of the mission of the biopark to have that type of use and tenant. Moving to the parking variance. So this is a multi-use building, as I mentioned. It's primarily office and research facility with restaurant and retail on the lower floors. The requirement I included in the package is would be 378 spaces before the collective parking calculation. With the collective parking calculation, it's 375 spaces understandably, since it's not an alternate between commercial and residential. So we are looking at a 375 space requirement for this building. We are building a new 300-space parking garage just across the site at Fayette and Fremont. This is intended to serve both phases, and we are intending to allocate in that 300-space garage 175 spaces to this building. There's a bit of estimate there because we don't, phase 2 is not before the board, it is not programmed. We don't know what the uses are going to be and therefore what the parking needs are going to be. That 175 space allocation is based on our best projection of the square footage and, as I'll discuss, our estimate of our need for tenant parking. In addition, in the second phase, we are planning 80 surface spaces to serve that second building, but again, it's not before the board. The garage is within the 600-foot radius and under common control with the biopark, so there is no variance needed for the distance of the parking facility, only the number of spaces. Our original plan, which was discussed with the community a number of times, was to build our required spaces below grade. We discovered during geotechnical studies that there was pressurized water under the building, essentially a geyser, which made it impossible to build parking in that location. So we were immediately looking at alternate parking, and we essentially, it was fortunate that there was that site, what we've been calling the notch lot at Fayette and Fremont, where we could build a parking garage, but it was really not part of our original plan and not part of what was originally, the master plan of the biopark. So in light of the hardship of the unexpected site condition, we selected the new site and sort of estimated what our parking needs would be based on the fact that we really didn't want to build a parking garage there, and that no one really intended a parking garage to be there, and certainly no one intended a mammoth parking garage to be 375 spaces, plus whatever our unknown parking needs are in phase 2. It just was not really part of anyone's vision for that part of the biopark. So that really imposed sort of a practical difficulty in changing our plans and constructing parking that wasn't needed. As a practical matter, 375 spaces for just this building is simply more than we need. And we know that because the biopark is not a one-off developer. We have, from 15 years of operational data, we know what our parking needs are. So just a few points on that. The current parking garage at Baltimore and Poppleton is 213,000 square feet. It was constructed in 2005 at a central location intended to serve the entire biopark. Right now, the utilization rate for monthly cardholders at that site is 55%. It would be more typical in the central business district for that number to be 65%. So we believe that there's existing parking availability at that garage, which is not relevant for zoning because it's outside of the 600 feet, but it is a campus. On the previous land use controls, which was the biopark PUD, there were lower ratios than are currently imposed by the base zoning. It had been 1 per 1,250 square feet for lab space and 1 per 1,000 square feet of office space. We're now at 1 per 1,000 for lab and 1 per 800 for office per the ratios in the new zoning code. We know that that's more than we need because we've been passing through our original ratios to tenants under leases for 15 years. We know that despite the requirements in the zoning code being more demanding, we know our needs. Additionally, laboratory space has a 24-hour usage cycle. It doesn't have sort of the peaks and valleys that normal parking garages have to plan around at rush hour. That's so much so that under all of our current leases at the biopark, there is no hours impositions on HVAC. We expect all of our laboratory tenants to essentially run 24-hour operations. With respect to transit, the university shuttle service, which has been in operation since 2012, I think, has a dedicated route serving the biopark. In addition, the city's bus routes, including the Charm City Circulator's Orange route, serves the biopark. In addition, we see a growing number of tenants and visitors arriving to the biopark by bicycle or scooter. There's currently, we see very high utilization rates. We see the scooters everywhere, and we see bikes all over the bike racks. So we do have a sense that that is sort of changing with the times as well. So in conclusion, with respect to building height, we are looking at the 36-foot variance for building height to accommodate the laboratory space, which is really the only space that is the main use that serves this site, this very unique site. And with respect to parking, we are essentially kind of doing the best we can, given that there was the hardship of the water under the building, and we are building a brand new parking garage and sort of having to change our plans. So with that, any questions?
You're going to have dedicated bike parking?
Yes, required.
Greg.
We will, and it's required by zoning, I think, for this building, 48 spaces, secured bike parking, and then some parking outside as well.
Thanks.
The parking garage itself, do you think that, is it just for the tenants of this building, or will there be, people who live in the area renting out monthly space in this garage as well?
Sure. So the parking garage is meant primarily during business hours for tenants of the biopark, but it's open to anybody. So anybody can drive up, pull a ticket, and they're a daily parker. But the monthly parking spaces, so guaranteed rights in and out, would be reserved for tenants of the biopark, but
Okay.
open for daily parking as well to anybody.
Okay, thank you. We're good?
Yeah. I guess the last question is, will there be a required Chick-fil-A in the building? To be determined, okay.
To be determined. That is not yet programmed.
Right. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Ma'am.
How you doing? My name is Paulette Curl. I'm the president of the Town of the Terrace. Yes, we are looking forward for this building to come, but we also need to meet up with one another. My community, the Towns of the Terrace, haven't met up with them yet. And so I'm waiting on that. We have discussed it. And for the parking space, the bio people are always parking in our parking space for free.
What do you mean by your parking space?
Like where my community live at.
In the
where
neighborhood.
I live at, in the neighborhood.
Street parking,
Yes,
you mean?
street parking.
Okay.
Yes. We can never get a parking spot. No, it's always, because all the businesses coming around, into our community now, making it a business community, and we are a resident, community. So I just want to have a meeting with them, with the Town of the Terrace, so they could tell our people what's going on in my community. And they also looking for jobs as well, So we don't want to stop it, We just want everybody to come together and agree on everything, because it's enough development coming in our communities, coming in, building stuff, but not doing anything for the community. And we are tired of it. We practically sick of it, because we see it happen all the time. So that's why we trying to put our feet down and make sure all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thank you,
Have
ma'am.
you talked to Department of Transportation about neighborhood permit parking?
No, we haven't.
You should.
Because there's certain neighborhoods or in the city where they've gotten together and so the residents have actual permits. And so there are permits for, like, you could have a permit put in your car and signs up, this is a permanent parking area between these hours, so people can't just come and park their cars for hours, okay? Without being ticketed or towed.
Yeah, my name is Stansbury Lee. I'm a delegate of Towns of the Terraces, and there are signs posted there, like what you're saying for the residents, but a lot of times people just go over that anyway. But the building that's going to be, the 10-foot building that's going to be put there, I live right on Fayette Street, and I just wanted to, want things to be addressed about how the park, like they say, the parking lot's going to be there, and I just wanted to know what exactly the building is going to be constricting the view of everything, and I just have concerns about the building.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Sonia Edie, and I am the president of the Poppleton Now Community Association. So I'm coming here today representing my community. We have long-standing residents. My family has been in the neighborhood since the 40s. My dad still resides in the 300 block on North Kirk Street. He's 84 years old, and so we have deep roots in the neighborhood. I'm here today to ask for a postponement behind the fact that we did not have prior knowledge of this hearing. We happened to be working on the pole study for the pole homes, and our board was out doing surveying the neighborhood for a meeting, and we happened to come across the posting. And so I was asking, y'all, do you have their number? Could you call them right now? And so that's how urgent it was to hear last Monday that there was going to be a hearing this Tuesday. So our normal community association meetings is every third Thursday. So we asked if, I met with Jane, and we asked if they could come out and speak with us, to update us on what this hearing was going to be about. And so they did. They came out. We had a good representation from the community, over 20 people there from the community, but there were a lot of questions asked, and not enough time because they weren't actually supposed to have been on that meeting, and we had other people out, so we weren't able to address a lot of the issues, but a lot of the issues came out, but we weren't able to address them all. And so this is the reason that I was asked from the community if we can come down and oppose, this until we have an opportunity to meet with Wexford, University of Maryland. I'm also on the board of the Southwest Partnership. So I am well aware of a lot of the development and the changes to where they were actually supposed to have built 7 years ago on West Baltimore site. And now for it to change over to Poppleton, without our knowledge, so we have transparency issues, and just tired of the development that's continuing coming into the neighborhood of Poppleton on the north side, where it's a predominantly black neighborhood, and we just seem like people are, actually I use the word dumping on us. If you can't build it here, the city is seeming to make agreements like, oh, we have some land here, and everybody's coming in, bypassing the community association. And we are learning about all this development at a Southwest Partnership board meeting or outside of, even as far as the Archdiocese coming, I got congratulated from an article in the newspaper. So these are things that we have been up against. So again, it's important for us to have the opportunity to sit down. And first of all, I would like to allow them, because they actually came out and they heard the concerns of the community last Thursday. And I believe that they should go back to their constituents and talk about what they heard from the meeting, and also give us another opportunity to meet and have these hard answers, questions, and then come back and let them give us, the community, a professional presentation like they did for the Southwest Partnership. The PowerPoint, you had the decision makers in the house, and so allow us that same opportunity, and when you talk about the original agreement, because I supported them in the zoning, the last 2 zoning hearings we had, and I came out in support because I understood what they was actually building. But they came back with, oh no, now because of the water, you know, we have to now bring this parking lot. And again, we also asked, okay, outside of Southwest Partnership, when you hear this funding, outside of this Southwest Partnership and this funding, because that funding is to be divided between 7 communities of the Southwest Partnership, not just Poppleton. And it's equal shares. So we're talking about, you are now in our community, y'all are obstructing our views. You know, y'all are taking our parking. Nobody's parking in those other 6 neighborhoods. They're parking in our neighborhood, you know, and right now they have a parking lot, but it's being underused. People look, who's gonna pay to park when you can park for free? You know, and so that's been a major concern with now also because you're getting ready to put retail on the lower floor. That's going to bring foot traffic. That's going to be bringing people from downtown across. You know, when you say you want to bring that divide, you want to break that divide, so you're talking about bringing people across. That's more people that's going to be coming into the community. So one of the things that the community asked for was, can we have some guaranteed space to be able to come and park for free? I heard you talk about, you know, the permitted parking. That's the issue with permitted parking also, because that then limits us. If you have friends, if you have something at your house, you have friends coming over, we're then also limited to parking space. So that's another major concern. So we didn't think that it was too much to ask that you can give us, I don't know how they would come up with the concept of how to allow the community free usage, you know, for the access to the parking, but that's one of our asks. Another thing was, we just went out in the hall, was talking to Ms. Jane about bringing forth other programming that the community needs. Nobody even knew that they have a school, what is the CCB? BCCC. You know, no one in the community was aware, and she's the president of the Towns of the Terrace. Nobody was aware that this entity even exists in the community. So that's how the relationships, you know, are so far apart. So we're trying to build a relationship with them. And we want them to know that we're here. We want a partner, but we want this to be fair. You know, we want everybody to be clear, you know, and we want it to be a sustainable relationship. And to ask for something outside as far as financing, our community need financing. With the post-study, we need to be able to have new buildings. We're trying to bring in resources for the people. I don't know if y'all are aware of them going to tear down the pole homes. And so we're looking now to see, you know, which land use we can have to bring services and resources to the community. So this is an opportunity for a give back to also to help us support, because we have to find matching funds. You know, so these are things that we're looking at, and we're saying that we want to be able to have the opportunity to come outside of Southwest Partnership and for them to have a relationship personally with Poppleton as far as community initiatives are concerned. So they are my major concerns. Poppleton has 7 different, housing stocks that function independently of their own. So they have their own resident council, and so we are just getting to the point where I've been president a little over 2 years now, and that has been my fight, was to break that divide within the community alone. You know, to be able to bring these 7 different housing stocks, pole homes, the terraces, we have Highlands House, Vintage Gardens, we had 2 senior buildings, you know, so to try to get their tenant residents who don't even know that they live in Poppleton, you know, so to try to bring them together and it's one voice, because we are being impacted. And so that's been a fight. And so again, I'm just getting to this point. And so not to have this relationship come in and bring another divide, because at that meeting it was argumentative, you know. with me afterwards, you know. So I just need to be able to ask again that we can come together and meet to secure us with commitments in writing. The last developer came in with the community, got all kinds of support from the community, and then after everything was done, he turned away and turned his back on the community, who supported him through getting a TIF and his funding, you know, and so we can't continue in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And also, the towns of the Terrace, I have 198 kids with no playground, no community service, no nothing. It's sad that the kids have to live like this. And I'm fighting real hard for my children because they want a playground, they want a football field, they want a community center, and a basketball field. They have nowhere to go, nowhere to play. You ought to see the little playgrounds that they have. It's not even a playground because they took the slide down, they took the bars down. It's just a pole. And you know what that pole lead to? So they dancing on it like it's a strip pole. So I don't want that in my community. I'm having a hard time keeping my kids off the street from the drug dealers. You know, I don't even have funding to take them places, but I come out my own pocket and help them and try to let them, you know, do other things. I have a book program going on with the library, which I have to utilize outside because I don't have an office yet. So everything is hard for me, you know. I might thinking I'm getting up, but somebody knocked me back down. So,
Ma'am, I don't mean to interrupt you, only because there's one gentleman that's been standing here and he hasn't had an opportunity to speak.
he's getting ready to speak.
Okay.
And that's all I wanted to say before you stop me. But I just want to get that point across because these children are lacking of a lot of things.
Sure.
And it's sad.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, my neighbors. My name is Wali Mutazamil, Mutazamil, Wali. I serve as one of the many stockholders in the Poplarton community. I serve the Poplarton Community Neighborhood Association. I've learned that traditionally when we talk about partnerships, there's a winner and a loser. I think that our presence here is to minimize any losers. We prefer to work with our potential new neighbors in a smart partnership, not a partnership. Smart partnership is defined as a win-win outcome. There are no losers. Certainly, Ms. Sonia, myself, and others over the years have worked with Mrs. Jane, and others. But Southwest Partnership does not have the same purpose, mission, values, ethics, activities that speaks to the Poplarton community. For jurisdiction purposes, Poplarton is from Martin Luther King Boulevard headed west to Carlton, and from Baltimore Street on the north side of West Baltimore over to Mulberry. Recently, through one of our surveys, we discovered in the Poplarton community and in Poe Homes in particular, 95% of all those who participated in the survey said that violence is the #1 challenge. That's not the same dynamics of our anchor neighbors. Violence, disabilities. One can say, go to this institution and apply. But when 6% of our people do not have a high school education, that's a false presumption. Life isn't like that for any of us. We're looking for an opportunity to present community initiatives that speak to a win-win. where the perception is that you are a giver and not a taker. We have had experiences over the years. Take, and we think that this is a great opportunity for us to get to know each other and create some connections. Yes, we're asking for a postponement of the hearing. We need legal representation. These are some very powerful institutions here. We're individuals. We're not an institution.
Let me stop you, sir. Were you present at the beginning of this hearing?
I was present at the beginning of the hearing today.
Did you all hear me ask if anyone requested a postponement of the hearing?
I heard you make that statement, sir. And my response, I spoke to my neighbor, and the interpretation was that when you made your announcement, that was not applicable to us. Is that correct when I inquired?
Yes, we thought it was for people who we had called out. Somebody was requesting, so we thought it was for just that group for today.
Well, I apologize for being unclear, but the nature of that request or ask or inquiry is we have 3 board members, and any decision that we make has to be unanimous. If we had 4, we could have some disagreement, or 5, we could have some disagreement. It could be 3-2, 4-1, and you could still get approval for your particular project. But because we only have 3, it requires a unanimous decision. And so whenever that occurs, we offer any party the opportunity to postpone if they don't want to abide by that rule, which is a rule we have when we have 3 board members. So I apologize for that being unclear, but that was the time to request a postponement.
We did request, I sent the email out this morning.
No, ma'am.
No, I'm saying I sent the email out this morning to UM in Wexford requesting
No, the
from them a
postponements.
postponement.
The postponements have to come here. If it's less than 48 hours
Correct.
before the hearing, they have to be presented here, like someone did earlier today, requested a postponement because they weren't within that time frame. And so, again, I apologize for it being unclear, but that,
We was with the hope of them asking for a postponement. We didn't know, I didn't know that we had that same ability. I thought that it was up for them, because I was told this morning that, no, they weren't gonna ask for a postponement, that they were gonna continue with this, and this is why we're here today. We came to oppose, because they said that they were gonna go forward with it. But we, coming in here today, we did not know that we were, actually, I didn't even see a sign-up sheet. You know, normally, I've never been in this type of a room. Usually it was on the other side.
Well, and I think that's part of the confusion is that here's the sign-up sheet, which we announced several times at the very beginning, and no one signed up in opposition. So no one knew that you were in opposition. So if you all can sign in,
that's when I
that would
ask
be
for-
essential.
When I have a matter, at the beginning of the hearing, I generally ask Mr. Baumgartner, because I don't see that sign-up sheet, whether or not we have any matters for which there's opposition. And at that time, we give the parties an opportunity to speak in the event that they could come to some understanding and compromise. And for those that were identified for which there was opposition, made a specific request or opportunity for them to speak. So if you're not on the list, then it's hard for us to know that you're here in opposition to the matter. So that's how that process works.
I never heard you ask if.
I didn't ask, that wouldn't be me, that's the folks that run it.
Never heard anybody say that you need to sign in. And like I said, I've been to several hearings, and it was always a sign-in sheet in the back somewhere. When you come in on the table and you sign off, check off if you're opposing, you know, or before, and they actually know, you know, who you are and which part you're saying. So this was totally different for us today. So we were just actually just sitting here, you know, waiting and
Okay.
outcome.
So I don't know if this will extend things or not, but the only things that are before the board today are the height of the building and the number of parking spaces. That's it. No financing, no nothing. The only 2 issues that are before the board today are those 2 singular issues. So I'd be curious to know if there's community opposition to the height of the building and the parking garage and the number of parking spaces. That's all the authority that this board has today. So it doesn't make sense to have to kick the ball down, for a future date if the opposition, what I'm hearing, is about communication and kind of open lines, which are all very, very good things, and we encourage those things. But for today, it's building height and parking. So could you offer a very brief synopsis of any opposition, a very, very brief synopsis as to opposition to building height and or parking?
Mr. Chairman, I think that it's been very clear that there was a misinterpretation or the orientation of how we go forward with a postponement. As we have said publicly, I say, oh, this is our opportunity to let it be known that we would like to request a postponement, as when you mention it. And my neighbor here, again, we're not savvy in this bureaucratic process, and she thought in her interpretation it was different than my interpretation, and I'm not here to overshadow that. But I think that, again, if the orientation is that this could have been postponed and not continue to use your metaphor of kicking the football down the field, we could have inserted our position to request for a postponement for legal representation, had that been clear to us. So again, I think that from the very beginning, given her experience, typically is in the back. We were in here before any of you gentlemen and ladies entered this room. We did not hear opposition sign up over here. So I think, again, that the orientation is in question here for us to move forward here and not be rushed or thrust into it. Well, do you have any opposition against parking? Yes, we do. Do you have any opposition to height? Yes, we do.
Not to be argumentative, sir, but these folks signed in opposition to other cases. So how did they know to sign in opposition?
I cannot speak to their orientation, nor can I speak to their experience with these proceedings. But we have been very clear. This is a new one for us here, and in the past, when Ms. Sonia has been here, this was not the way that these proceedings started. So kudos to those that had the right interpretation, but again, one shoe doesn't fit all.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do.
Even with that, it seems to me that.
Go up to the mic.
It seems to me, every time y'all called another case, another hearing, when you write the numbers, you constantly say X, were they opposing, and or if they were requesting a postponement. That was continuing, so.
Well, let me clarify for the record, because I have, and this is not to be argumentative, but it's to make a clear record. The rules that I read and the process rules are for everybody to take into account. I think they're fairly clear. The gentleman indicated that he had an understanding that we want a postponement, and he asked you, and your view was to rely or defer to the applicant to request a postponement, but that's not.
No, that's not what I said.
That's what the gentleman said.
No,
But
when he asked me, was that for us to come up and request a postponement, I told him, no, that was for the people, the case that y'all had called. It was for them, that we was waiting for our case to be called.
That was inaccurate. That was, the
So-
statement at the beginning was across the board for everybody in the room. I think I made that fairly clear, that it went to everybody in the room. That's why I make it at the beginning of the proceedings. But again, that being said, we've heard the testimony, we hear the opposition. You would like to, you're saying now you want a postponement.
We never intended for this to be heard.
Okay, that was not made anywhere, shape, or form clear to us that you never intended to be heard, because we didn't hear from you until the case was called. So, here we are. Hearing the matter, they presented their side, you presented a number of issues that you've raised. You've raised issues about parking, not necessarily issues about, well, you've raised issues about the height of the building and indirectly the height of the building, in that it would impact certain views of individuals. That's not to say that initiatives and various other things that you've raised can't be discussed between the parties as you go forward. And I do understand that there are certain things that need to be done in order to allow the project to move forward. And there are lots of pieces that are to that. You've been involved in other developments in your community, and so I know you're aware of that. But we're here with, frankly, an opportunity to postpone being waived, and we've presented now the matter. And so I think we've now begun to make a record, and have made the record, for this matter on these particular variances that are being requested. And so if you can tell us any more that you'd like to, other than repeating the request that you'd now like to postpone, if there's any more that you have to your opposition that you'd like to support your opposition to what their specific request is, which is variances for the height and for the parking, then please tell us now.
Well, they are, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, has this ever happened before where there was a misinterpretation or the orientation?
Not to my knowledge.
So this is the first time this ever has happened?
I can't say that. I said not to my knowledge.
To your knowledge, thank you, sir.
I've been here for about a year and a half as a board member.
Thank you, sir.
In that year and a half, the sign-up sheet has always been there. A statement has always been made to the people coming into the room. If you have opposition, sign in. The request for any postponements, when there's a 3-member board, is always made at the beginning of the proceedings because it has to be unanimous. If anybody doesn't want to go forward under those circumstances, speak now. That's what happens. And so my experience is, in the time that I've been affiliated with this board, is that what happened today is what happens at every hearing. I can't speak to, again, any of your experiences, which have may occurred prior to, my coming on to the board, but that's my understanding of how it's always been. Again, in my time, that's how it's been, and
Yes,
so that's
sir.
all I can go by. And so the statements and the, I guess, rules of process that I stated up front, that's what we do.
Yes, sir.
And again, I felt that they were clear enough.
Did you raise these issues before the city council?
Did we raise
Yeah,
the
that you
issues
brought up.
with whom, sir?
City council.
With the city council?
It never went to the city council. This one came here first.
Weren't there like consolidation bills and a whole series of bills?
Over several years, there have been properties
No,
that have
we
been
was just-
rezoned. This has been a process that's been going on for quite a while now. So
This
it's
one
a
right
very,
here, it's particularly with this Wexford, we had one over in, 317, in front of the city council, where we stood and we opposed. Again, you sign in on the outside of that building, you sign in.
We understand
You
that.
know, and I stood up and we were able, they went first, and this is the same way that I told them today, that they will go first, and then we will have our opportunity to speak. This is the way, for all of the hearings, the last hearings that we went to over the city council, office, and also in this room here.
That is correct. They have the opportunity to go forward, and you have the opportunity to speak, but that's not a postponement. That's
No,
presenting
that
the
wasn't,
matter.
that wasn't for a postponement, that was in opposition.
Okay.
So today, when you talked about the opposition and postponement, it sounded to me, because you talked about, you called case numbers, and people were here off of different case numbers, and every time you said a case number, you refer back to them if they were an opposing or if they was trying to get a postponement.
Well, that's not my recollection. Number one, there was a matter here.
You can rewind the tape.
Well, that's fine, and it may be for you to do that, but I'm not going to go revisit what took place here, because one, it's not in accordance with the protocol that we would utilize, and it's certainly not what I recall doing. I recall stating across the board, anybody requesting a postponement, please raise your hand, state. There was a gentleman who raised a hand back there, who ultimately, I think, did not, or he may have, but there was one gentleman who raised a
I
hand.
remember we was in here.
Okay, and so it would have been at that time, was the appropriate time to raise the issue of a postponement, to allow the matter to go forward, and they present.
That's actually when
No,
he
let me
reached
finish.
over and
Let me
asked
finish,
me
because we're
that.
making a record. We're still on the record. To allow everything to be done, And when you are in the midst of your opposition time, to then say, we'd like a postponement, is not the time. That's too late. And I think the record is clear enough to establish that the opportunity to ask for a postponement was made. It was extended. I could be wrong. I guess we'll see. But it seems to me that the parties are here in good faith. There was notice given for the hearing. We're putting aside the issue of postponement because a postponement was not requested. And now they've presented, the applicant has presented, you presented an opposition. They will have the last word, because that's how we do these hearings. And we'll go forward. Is there anything else you would like to add with regard to your opposition? In support of your opposition that hasn't already been stated?
Well, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, in that this is the first time for you and me and others, maybe, in this experience of honoring a human error. This is not about self-blame. We're not blaming them.
And nor am I blaming you, sir.
And so, and we're not blaming you. So I'm just saying, again, I want to be clear that this is not about self-blame, but it is about a human error did occur, and I think that's very obvious. And I'm just asking you as the chairperson, and I'm also going to ask our new neighbors if they would be open to empathizing that there was a human error that took place here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Stomzall.
We are happy to have Wexford and RPC address some of the points that came up in the opposition testimony, but if I may, I'd like to sort of set the stage. We respectfully agree with the chair's analysis that the opportunity to request a postponement has been waived, and we do not agree to a postponement. However, we can agree to keep meeting with the community as we have been in our long track record, the biopark's long track record of community engagement with meeting with the community. This has been a long process for entitlements on this project, to say nothing of the 15 years that the biopark has been engaging with the community. As it was mentioned, there have been 6 bills that have gone through the city council already, 3 street closing bills and 3 land use bills. Ms. Edie, as she mentioned, did testify in opposition at the Housing and Urban Affairs Committee hearing for the urban renewal plan amendment, but that she did say in her testimony that it was unrelated to the biopark. She had procedural concerns about how the URP was amended with respect to the La Cité project. There was no opponent testimony at either the PUD repeal or the rezoning hearings before the Land Use Committee. I do want to address the statement that there have been no meetings with the community up to this point, because frankly, the biopark takes that very seriously. Just as a quick rundown as to this project, beginning in March 19th, 2019, we presented updated plans to the Southwest Partnership showing this building, showing a 10-story building at this location, of which Poppleton now is a constituent member of the Southwest Partnership. On that same date, coming out of that presentation, the biopark representatives reached out to Ms. Edie and offered to meet with her and her community members in Poppleton now to present the latest plans at their convenience to discuss further. There was a community meeting at 801 West Baltimore Street in the biopark on May 6th, 2019. On May 7th, 2019, there was a meeting regarding the memorandum of understanding for community benefits following the restructuring of the tax increment finance that was originally approved for the other site in the biopark. There was, on May 21st, 2019, a Southwest Partnership meeting, a president's meeting. And May 24th, 2019, Ms. Schaub and Mr. Herlong met Ms. Edie at her house and presented the latest design drawings and renderings with respect to again, showing a 10-story building. On July 25th, 2019, there was a community meeting and an update again at the biopark building at 801 West Baltimore Street. And then finally, the last meeting with Poppleton now, that was late last week. So I don't mean to belabor it. It's a point that we take, community engagement is a point that we take very seriously.
Ms. Thompson, let me ask you a question regarding the issue. At what point did the issue arise that there could not be underground parking in the building because of the water situation?
So that was later in the game, I would say, but the July community meeting is where we presented the updated garage, that it wasn't going to be under the building, that it was going to be a standalone garage, proposed to be a standalone garage.
Thank you.
With respect to height, as the board knows, we are really only looking, 150 feet is permitted by right. We are only looking at the increment. And as I mentioned in my presentation, the majority of that height really comes from the HVAC equipment, which is set back and really doesn't cause much of an additional burden. I mean, it is set back and screened. So it's not, it is a majority sort of lower impact height, not as high. And I'm not really sure what the sort of incremental difference is, but there is a difference between this and, so it's not counting from nothing. It's counting from 150 feet with respect to the variance. There were a number of things mentioned that are sort of outside of the board's purview with respect to community funding and the structure of the Southwest partnerships. We'd be happy to discuss, but we consider it outside the board's purview. With respect to parking, frankly, we don't want to underpark our building either. We are a long-term community stakeholder here, and it doesn't do anyone any good to have parking, to constrain our own parking. We are parking the project to the level that we know the project needs, and we are going to keep working with the community on the community issues. That's what we do, and we are certainly willing to continue to meet with the community as we've been doing since the inception of the biopark. But frankly, it's not our perception that the parking strains in the community come from underparking of the commercial buildings in the biopark as much as perhaps university students or some sort of other source other than sort of parking of our commercial buildings. I think that is all. We cannot agree to postpone it, but we are willing to keep meeting with the community as we have been doing for years and years at this point. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you so much for your presentation. Calling the case of 2019-302, 3700 Fernhill Avenue. Stephanie Williams. Good afternoon, Ms. Williams.
Hi.
This is a request to use portion of this property for daycare center for up to 35 children.
That's correct.
Okay.
Raise your hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony that you have given this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property was already authorized for use as a daycare center for 20 children by the board. Its approval was in appeal number 2017-74. This application proposes to continue this use, but to increase the capacity of the daycare center, which might also cause an increase in operating hours and staffing related to the additional children. That was not detailed in the application available to the department. However, that said, the department has no objection to the application. Thank you.
Ma'am, can you tell us about your project?
Yes, in 2017, I did an application to convert into a daycare center, a residential home into a daycare center. It was approved for 20 people, but it was based on my measurements. When the daycare center actually opened 2 years later, April of 2019, the fire marshal came out and they do measurements, as well as the Office of Child Care, and they do measurements. They both came up with a higher number for capacity. The fire department said 35 kids, and Office of Child Care said their measurements came up with 30. And again, the 20 was based on my measurements and my planning for the daycare center. So we opened April 15th of 2019 officially, and there is definitely a need for child care in the community because it filled up immediately. Within 2 months, we were full. So
I called to see how I could get the additional, the capacity increase because of the still need that we have. We have a waiting list of parents trying to get their kids in. One thing I want to add is about the parking, if that comes up. I was told that I have sufficient parking across the front of the property as well as the garage. We have a 2-car garage and a 2-car parking pad in the back that we could use for parking, so I have sufficient parking. I also did an appeal or application with the parking authority initially, and when they came out, they said that I did not need a loading zone for the daycare center. So I've been asking, I've called several times to get that in writing. I have the person's name who I've been dealing with the whole time, but I have nothing in writing saying that, but they did tell me that. So that's it. I want to increase by 15 kids.
Okay, so you've indicated that the fire department said 35 was okay, but the state said 30?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's measurements, but yeah, it was different.
Well, doesn't this, by whose determination it governs?
The fire marshal.
The fire marshal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No.
State of Maryland governs.
Okay.
So if the state of
Well,
Maryland says
usually-
30,
okay.
you're capped at 30.
Right.
Okay.
That's
All right.
why I asked the question.
Okay.
Have you gone back to the state to, that they did it based on their measurements?
The state of Maryland Office of Child Care, yes.
Okay, and so they're not apt to change that determination of 30 based on their measurements, so, okay. Yeah, it's always been my understanding that the state controls.
That's fine.
So is there an amendment of your request from?
I would like to amend my request to increase the capacity from 20 to 30.
Okay.
Good move.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Nope.
No, good.
Okay. Thank you for, anything else you'd like to add, ma'am?
No.
All right.
Nothing.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jackers.
Oh, thank you.
Calling the case of 2019-338, 2420 Fleet Street, Barbara Maloney. Good afternoon.
Hi.
This is a request to construct a new second, third, and fourth floor additions with rooftop deck and a rebuild existing first floor patio roof, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
So who's Ms. Malone?
that's me. I'm Kimberly Proctor. Proctor, yes.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm?
Oh, sorry.
Swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Very well. Tell us about your project, Ms. Maloney.
I'll do the talking, yeah. So basically, we're residents in Canton. We live in Baltimore City, and we have a small house and a baby, and we're having another baby in 4 weeks. So we bought a house around the corner that we just want to make bigger to accommodate our family, and also just because we want to stay in our neighborhood and have a little bit of space to grow. So basically, right now, it's 3 stories. The first one goes all the way back, the second one's partial, and the third one is partial as well. And we basically wanted to take it back and then add a 4th floor so that we could at least maybe have like a deck or some ability to walk out to just get a better view. I think the house next to us is already 3 stories high, and the one that's Directly across the street from us is catty also corner. 3 stories all the way Yeah. back. And the full then lot. we're also really, behind us is the Ukrainian Roman Catholic Church and Patterson Park Apartments. So there are also like a lot of tall buildings kind of right in our vicinity.
The property currently has 2 apartments, or
It's 2-unit right now,
And we're gonna maintain the 2 units.
but we're gonna occupy
One of them.
the much, like 90% of the
Bigger
property
one.
and like in-law suite.
Got it.
This is what happens when you have 5 siblings like she does. You need space for people to come visit you.
That's all right. Better to have it, I guess, than not,
Yeah.
right?
so, the additions aren't covering up any currently unimproved areas, correct? It's merely expanding on a footprint that already exists.
Correct. Yes.
L-shape.
Oh, yeah, that's the L-shaped property.
Yeah, it used to be a a Polish Veterans Club, I think, and they bought like a few lots over the years. So it's kind of it's been a few lots that were combined, basically.
Great. Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good luck with the baby.